We have a few things to do to register the presence of council members first, however, and I have to go last.
Recording?
Thank you for
Recording in progress.
We are now recording. Welcome to the September 27th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting of the Midcoast Community Council. We have some special attendance issues tonight, and you want to state that you are using your, it's that twice a year just cause, and you're attending because, can you speak?
Yes, hi. I unfortunately was on my way here and have a flat tire. And I didn't have a ride, so I am participating remotely, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay, but you have two just causes a year and you count as a voting member, so there's no problem there. Claire, can you speak to your situation?
Last week I took communicable disease exemption, which I think you have unlimited of, and I'm better, but I'm not all better, so I think I'm still on that.
All right, and I am taking what's called an emergency provision that you can use for 3 months a year because of a medical condition, but in my case, it requires the members of the council who are present to vote to allow me to participate as a voting member. So I'm going to ask Scott, if you would call the roll and then call for a vote on my participation.
Okay. All right. Hey, okay, Greg.
I'm here waiting for the vote.
Okay. And I can't use, can I ask Ann and Claire? They are here?
Yes,
but
yes. They're here eligible for participation.
Okay. All right, Ann, you're here?
Yes.
Claire?
Here.
Kimberly?
Here.
I'm here, and Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's vote for Greg. So all right, Ann?
Voting to allow me to participate as a voting member.
Right. So Ann?
Yes.
Okay. And Claire?
Yes.
And Kimberly?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so with that, we have a quorum. Gus has advised he'll be there at 7:05, but I think it's okay to start the meeting and begin with our usual material. Is Mike O'Neill in the audience? Because he has sent in a comprehensive statement. Okay, he's not in, so then I better read what he sent, or at least highlight it. It's posted on the website. So just to overview it, the county formed a domestic violence task force following the homicides of 5 women this year. So they're going to report back with an action item. There's a
Mike's just arrived. Mike just arrived.
Oh, Mike did arrive. All right, Mike, I'm going to stop and let you go to the podium because I was just about to read what you had sent us.
He's still catching his breath, though.
Yeah.
Who's
that, Greg?
Looking good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, just gotta pull it up. And hopefully depending on technology working. There. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike O'Neill, and I am the legislative aide for Ray Mueller, supervisor of District 3 here. And of course, technology, of course, part of it's the operator. Darn it. Okay, so I'm just here to kind of tell you what's going on with the county. First thing is the county has established a domestic violence task force, and it's following the homicides of 5 women last year.
Is your volume off? I mean,
Amy says that has her microphone. No, I have this.
does anybody,
Oh.
is anybody connecting in the room with the phone? You don't have your, it looks like it went away.
Hello?
Hang on now. I'm gonna, hang on.
Can we ask everybody to please mute their Zoom, make sure you're muted.
You need to mute. I'm doing it. You're causing the echo, I think. Yes, I understand.
Sid, please let the people there at the meeting handle this, okay? I'm gonna mute Amy. I'm gonna mute
There's an
It's the only other
iPhone
person I-
that's still unmuted also.
iPad. I'm gonna mute iPad. All right. Does that solve the problem?
Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, seems to help. All right. So the county has formed a domestic violence task force after the death of 5 women last year. There were 5 homicides. The task force, consisting of a subgroup of domestic violence council members, will report back with some sort of action plan to the council and the larger community. There's a celebration of the arts. The 2nd annual countywide celebration of the arts takes place Saturday, September 30th from noon to 3 at San Mateo Central Park. The free event includes dances, music, poetry, and more, and the event's hosted by the San Mateo County of Arts and Culture. There's a community nature day at Huddard Park on Saturday, September 30th from 1 to 3. It's a free event for snacks, story time for kids, and a nature walk with a doctor. Parking is free, and just tell the gate attendant you're there for Nature Day. It's Latin Heritage Month, and it's going to be celebrated from September 15th through October 15th to embrace the history, culture, and contributions of Latin American countries. And this is a big one, and that is to please try to help protect San Mateo County agriculture. Significant portions of Santa Clara and Contra Costa counties are now placed under a quarantine due to an infestation of the oriental fruit fly, Bacatocera dorsalis, and I won't trust that pronunciation. So please avoid transporting any backyard fruit from inside quarantines. If you go see somebody, they have lemons, they have oranges, they have apples, don't bring them back, okay? Because we're trying to keep it out of San Mateo County. And especially buy your groceries at local grocery stores, certified farmers markets, or permitted farm stands. There's a lot of the farm stands you see that are not permitted by the county health department, the Farm Bureau, or anybody else. They bring in plants from wherever they bring them in. And I know in Pacifica where I live, there's a lot of like strawberry stands and stuff. So please, if you have any questions, call the Agricultural Commissioner's office at 650-363-4700. And guess what? Flu season comes around, and so does the time to go get new vaccinations. The regular flu shot and COVID-19. If you go to the website, vaccines.gov, it can give you the location to get a free vaccine. It's also Suicide Prevention Month this month, and there's actually going to be a special presentation at Half Moon Bay Library tomorrow night. Register ahead of time, go to the San Mateo County Library website, but it's to teach you the warning signs and signals of suicide, how someone might be contemplating suicide. There's also job opportunities if you want to become an election worker. And that's for the March 5th, 2024 presidential primary. And there's a Veterans Luncheon available, tickets for that also. That's on Monday, November 9th. And awards will be presented to the Veterans of the Year. Now, I do email this to the Midcoast Council, and Greg puts it on the Midcoast Council. So with everything I mentioned, there are websites if you want to get more information or register for an event or whatever, but you do have to the suicide prevention. You have to register ahead of time, and it is tomorrow. And the tickets for the Veterans Luncheon are November 9th, and you need to get the ticket ahead of time. So that's my report. And Greg, do you want me to call people out? Because I can see their hands.
If they have questions for you, Mike, why don't you call on them? Go ahead.
Okay, Sid?
Hi, Mike. I got a couple questions for you. We went to that Measure K listening session last month, and I'm wondering if you know when we're going to hear the outcomes of the county-wide results from all the different listening sessions that they had us put the little pebbles in the jars. Do you know?
I just got an email today that on October, for the agenda for a Board of Supervisors meeting on October 30th. And the first item on the agenda is discussion of Measure K. So I would assume that those findings from all those meetings are going to be incorporated into that. I did not see a staff report, so I can't say for sure. But if you check the Board of Supervisors website, that's on first item on a meeting for October 3rd.
Okay, I did listen in. Mike Calicky mentioned it was coming. I just wondered if you had a more quick update. And then how about a ribbon cutting for the Murata Bridge?
I don't have any updates on the Murata Bridge.
Okay, and then the Caltrans January storm debris on the shoulders of the road.
I was sent a form by Caltrans, and I forwarded that to you via email.
Oh, okay.
To be honest, when I drive it, I don't see any issues, but you seem to have a particular issue. So I sent you the form. If you want, I can resend it to you again tomorrow, and you can report it to Caltrans yourself, this specific issue.
Great, thanks for the help. Okay, how about evacuation? Do you have any more information on coast side evacuation?
I know that I do not have any more information.
Okay,
on that.
that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Claire?
Yes, Chandra Singh asked that we announce that the video of the presentation about the Moss Beach corridor is available, and I put the website link for that into the chat. She's hoping that people will take a look at it and make comments and questions because they will be at the next MCC meeting, and she'd like to be prepared to answer questions that people have.
Thank you, Claire. I'd forgotten to mention that. And by the way, we did extend the number of days that the displays that they had for that meeting are at the Coastside office. So if you come down to Ray's Coastside office there at the shops at Harbor Village, Unit 6, the maps and everything else are on display until this Friday. And then come next week, they are going to be removed. But there's a comment box there if you want to put in a comment. If you have another comment and you want to send it by email, send it to planningprojects@smcgov.org, San Mateo County Government.org. And they're also accepting comments on Cypress Point, which I know is a hot button here in town also. And that you would use the same email to send any comments or thoughts on that. Ann Rothman?
I think, am I unmuted?
No, you're unmuted, yeah.
Oh, good. So actually, I participated in the Board of Supervisors meeting and when they were going over the budget, and I noticed that Supervisor Mueller asked for and was told that he will get money for a stormwater management plan for the coast. So I didn't know if you have any further information about that, or but it is very encouraging that it sounds like there will be monies made available for the coast for the stormwater.
Right, and I would imagine we'll be having storms before the report comes out. Because if it's the very start and just allocating money for the study, that'll be a while they study the issue. So, yeah.
Thanks.
So he's working on it. Dan?
Yes, I just want to follow up on the concern about Highway 1. Some of the debris Sid had one concern, but I also brought up a concern that along Highway 1 between Montera and the tunnel, and from the tunnel down to Pacifica, there's some areas where the fog line, it's just there's
The bike lane.
unpredictable. It's a very unpredictable. If you're a cyclist, it's extremely unpredictable as to where you can ride off to the right of the side fog line. Some areas it's a foot and that's fine. Well, it's better than when it's down to 6 inches or 0, or a steep ditch, which forces a cyclist to ride into the road, of course. Now, since I brought it up the last time, I wanted to make a strong request that this issue, this specific issue, which I just brought up now, needs to be addressed at least on the curved areas. Okay, imagine.
And you're talking both north and south Highway 1?
Yeah, the whole stretch, wherever there is an insufficient existing space for cyclists to ride on the right, off the road, around the curves, you get me, right? And I'll tell you, I'm going to work this morning, in the dark, and I saw 2 cyclists coming southbound, in between the North Portal or the South Portal and Graylow Cove. I was a bit surprised, but hey, the road is for everybody, and yes, there are some branches on the side of the road, that are kind of taking up that space. And so I think that for cyclists, there should be a minimum, some level of showing concern for cyclists and making it safer.
I can.
And I understand some areas it's a big job. There might be retaining walls or whatever, but I think that if there was some will on both the county's part and Caltrans, a little bit could go a long way. A little bit of help could go a long way.
I put that in, but it is, especially when you mentioned that, I checked it out myself. And some of the spots there, I'm sure would require a retaining wall, which would be, because there's a minimum width of traffic lanes, which I believe is 12 feet, to accommodate buses and, semi trucks, etc. There's too much beyond that. The road.
If somebody really wanted to,
Yeah,
they could make it.
As
I'm gonna raise my hand.
a yeoman, I can't promise anything.
So that road is a defined bike route. There are signs that say it's the California coastal bike route, and it's supposed to have bikes on it. There should be passage for bikes along that route. Now, one thing you might know about is there was maybe a year ago when I went to get my parking pass for Lindemar. I was in that office and they said they were going to make a trail from somewhere in Pacifica up to the Devil's Slide Park. I saw that was in the works. Do you know anything about that?
That I believe, I don't know anything for sure, but I had heard scuttlebutt about a trail, and I don't know whether that's going to go through the Pedro Point Highlands, up behind the Ace Hardware and over the hill like that.
Yeah.
I know they've talked about doing a trail up that way, and that might be what they plan on doing. I don't know. I'm not making a promise or an announcement.
Since we're talking about bikes and stuff,
I don't know anything about that. I do know there has been a study. They have mentioned a portion of parking lot there to be a parking lot for the trail. So I know it's progressing slowly. And I know there was a meeting that was discussing some sort of fire break between it because of the eucalyptus up there. And
Okay.
a potential
Point of
source of.
order on this. Point of order on this, Mike. People are asking you questions that, it's logical that you can't provide any answers or commitment on right away. I'm going to suggest that Gus and Dan, if they're interested, sponsor an agenda item where we write a letter about this and include the comments from Sid and others and ask for specific action. But one of the things you guys have to research is who's going to be accountable for doing it. Okay, so we need to know who to write that letter to.
I think it would be Caltrans because it is a state highway.
Right.
I think I'm sorry, Greg, but my feeling is to keep the community council light on feet and being ready to let's let the county get this started. It's been brought up several times. I think that some communication has already been made, and we can take that step that you just suggested in the future, but let's not let the county off the hook and make more work for us. Let's just see how the county responds. That's my suggestion.
Right. I hear you, Dan. We can discuss it under future agenda items. Are there other people in the audience there who wish to speak or ask Mike questions? Because I can't see them.
I don't see any other hands.
All right.
Great.
Thank you for your time, Mike. We have a very crowded agenda tonight. And I want to ask first, are there any other government officials who are in the audience that wish to speak tonight? I don't see any. All right, so we'll move on to public comment. I want to make the note that we have over 30 participants and we have a crowded agenda with 3 items. So I'm going to ask public comments to be held to 2 minutes on this section, and as well when we discuss the individual agenda items, unless we find we have extra time, and then we can invite people to speak a second time. But right now, I think we're overburdened. So do we have people who want to speak on items not on tonight's agenda? In the audience? Seeing, hearing none, and I see no, oh, there's a hand, Sid Young.
Thank you. I was just trying to find my unmute. I did attend last night's Pacifica. Oh, actually, I watched it on Zoom after the fact. It was 6 hours long, so I waited till I got my jammies. They had a combination city council meeting, and they're looking over their arena numbers, so their housing element was studied. And I think the state has assigned them like over 1,800 housing units for the next 7 years to be built. There was no mention whatsoever of highway congestion. And I know I've driven through Pacifica to get to the city first thing in the morning, and all those little, outlets, bedroom communities coming out of the back of the valley. They're coming out of Crespi and Lindemar and Fassler and even Valamar. I don't know how they're going to do it. I just don't, but it's going to affect us too. So I just wanted to put that out there. Also, as MWSD, the oral arguments are coming up October 5th at Santa Clara Court for the Half Moon Bay Sam lawsuit that they initiated back in 2017. So I think later there'll be a link, at least on the MWSD website, if anybody wants to watch the oral arguments. Thank you.
What day was that?
October 5th, early in the morning. So if you wanted to drive down there, you'd probably have to get down there early, but it is going to be also broadcast. So anyway, let's keep our fingers crossed for our end of the coast. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I see no other off-agenda public comment right now. The next item is the consent agenda. We received the minutes from Scott today for 2 meetings, not just September 13th. And I posted them to the website, but I'm going to make the request we pull these from the consent agenda because I have not read them, and I wouldn't be surprised if a significant proportion of the council has also not had a chance to review them.
You asked for the 26 too, right? Is that the one?
We need May 17th as well. But let's come back to that later. We'll cover this under a new agenda item 4D, what to do with the minutes, and we can bring them forward at our very next meeting. So with that,
already approved July 26th. Am I wrong?
The question is, did
You
we
are
already
correct.
approve July
you are
26th?
correct. We approved July 12th, the 26th, and the 16th.
Okay,
So September 13th is new.
okay.
And then we need September 20th. And Lisa's reminding us we don't have anything for May, I believe it was 17th.
That was the extra meeting. May 17th was that in-between meeting, I'm almost positive.
I have a process question.
Go.
I'm a little uncomfortable. There's a lot of people here. And as you know, one of the reasons I've come in person is because we haven't had a lot of in-person people. If I leave the room, does that leave us without a quorum?
No, we've already established we have 6 people in attendance. And Scott, I think you need to recognize that Gus has arrived.
I did. I have them marked down. I have with the time. I have them marked down with the time.
Okay, we are well within the quorum, Kimberly.
Okay, so you don't have to have 4 in person.
Not now that we've already established the quorum, we do not.
Okay, so I'm very sorry. No offense, but I'm being very careful about my health and my parents' health, and I'm a little uncomfortable. It's not a reflection of anybody.
So, are you going to return in time to participate in the Montera North Peak Access Road or attend virtually? What are you going to do, Kimberly?
I can go back home and sign in virtually. That means I'll miss a portion of the meeting, but I can do that if that's acceptable.
Okay, good.
Kimberly, would you be, can I ask Kimberly if you would be comfortable going in one of the other rooms there?
I don't think the other rooms are available. They have an alarm on them.
Isn't like where the bathroom is and stuff? The kitchen?
It's not gonna stand in the corridor. Would it make a difference in the opening more windows, or probably not, right?
I'm just very nervous about
I
it.
understand.
I'm so sorry.
I understand.
So, I'll just go and I'll join again in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
All right, understood. All right, so we're on to regular item agenda 4A, the referral from planning for off-leash dog recreation at Quarry Park. I had expected, and I'll have to check, Nick Calderon to come tonight and
Greg, I'm here.
Okay, is it going to be you? Do you want me to make you co-host, Nick, or I don't see you here?
Yeah, I could. You want me to? I can either that or I could email. Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do that, and I can just share my screen.
Yeah.
With the presentation, if that works for you.
All right, wait a minute. I see you now. And I just made you co-host. Let me know if you are ready. Claire, did you have something you wanted to comment on before we start? Was this?
No, I was just
Point of
talking
order?
to Kimberly. That's okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks. All right, I gotta lower your hand then.
All right.
Excuse me, Greg, can I just wanted to get a feel for the room since there's so many people in the room. Is the audio okay for everybody? Are everybody able to hear and see everything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Good to start. All right. 1 second here. Okay. So first off, it's great to see everyone virtually. It's been a little bit of time since I've had a chance to visit with you all, and so look forward to discussing tonight the off-leash dog recreation pilot program, which wrapped up earlier this year, and of which there's a referral for a coastal development permit before you tonight. Greg, can you just confirm that my slide switched to slide 2?
It switched.
Awesome. Thank you.
These
Really?
poster and thing.
Perfect. Anyone who knows me
No.
knows that I'm not technologically the most competent.
A group of the girls are just gonna wait until the rescuers come, but one of them, she said.
So in 2018, the Board of Supervisors directed the San Mateo County Parks Department to develop a recommendation for an off-leash dog recreation pilot program in the San Mateo County Park system. To ensure the recommendation was developed through an inclusive and transparent process that considered the various interests of park users, the San Mateo County Parks Dog Work Group was formed. The work group was comprised of 2 parks commissioners, 3 park rangers, members of the Midcoast Community Council and the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council, and representatives from the dog owner, conservationist, equestrian, and mountain bike communities. Of the community members on the committee, 3 were from the Midcoast and 5 were from the coast side. After holding monthly public meetings, at which written and oral public comment was received, that lasted for a year, the work group developed a recommendation that was presented to the department. And using that recommendation, the department developed its own recommendation for the Board of Supervisors consideration, of which the board adopted at a later date. For those that remember the process, the coast side was the strongest voice advocating for off-leash access, and specifically at a coastal park. And consequently, the original proposal for the pilot program was for off-leash dog recreation at 2 coastal parks, which was later reduced down to 1. The pilot program, and that 1 is Quarry Park. The pilot program was structured really on the following principles: that off-leash dogs must be under voice and sight control, that dogs must remain on designated and signed trails within view and earshot and no more than 25 feet away from owner and handler, that dogs must be on leashed in developed areas, no more than 2 off-leash dogs allowed per owner or handler, and the owner and handler must have physical control of the dog when approaching or being approached by someone also not engaged in off-leash dog recreation. The map here on the slide shows the trails at which off-leash dog recreation is allowed pursuant to the pilot program. And as you can see, it's most of Quarry Park, with the exception of 3 trails, which were done so due to sensitive natural resources. And it also shows the 2 areas in the park where dogs are not allowed, one being the playground, and one being the reservoir. For a pilot program to be deemed successful or unsuccessful, there must be measurable standards to compare performance against. Therefore, using baseline monitoring data, and with the goal of making Quarry Park a place where different types of recreationalists can cohabitate while protecting resources, the department developed the standards shown on this slide. For the pilot program to be deemed successful, dog owners would need to clean up after their dog, keep their dog under voice and sight control, so other park users and wildlife were not being harassed or threatened, and prevent their dogs from damaging natural resources. Also, during development of the pilot program, many expressed concern that Quarry Park would turn into a dog park, a place where only people with dogs would want to recreate. Based on our CEQA review, the department developed an adaptive management plan that would allow us to adjust our management strategy based on monitoring data collected that corresponds specifically to these standards. We conducted monitoring 2 times a week for 3 to 4 hours each time, and alternated between mornings and afternoons and weekdays and weekends to capture various user data. We published reports on our findings on our website every 2 months throughout the pilot, including whether an adaptive management step was taken or not. Those reports are still published on our website and available for your review. This flowchart depicts the process used to make data-driven decisions during the pilot program. In essence, the department would collect data for 2 months, analyze if compliance was meeting the standards, and make management adjustments if necessary. For example, during 2 monitoring periods, the level of uncollected dog waste did not meet the standard. Looking at where dog waste was not being collected, the department added signage and trash receptacles, and in the following monitoring periods, the standard was met. At the end of the pilot, based on monitoring data collected, the department would make a recommendation as to if the pilot should be extended, terminated, or if the use should be authorized. So 6 of the 8 monitoring standards for the pilot program are shown on this table. The standards not accounted for are fecal coliform levels and visitor demographics. The department contracted with the Resource Conservation District to conduct regularly scheduled water testing. However, because the pilot occurred during severe drought conditions, viable water samples were unable to be collected. Later in the presentation, I'll also discuss the visitor demographics. As you can see, for the 6 standards shown and for the 6 monitoring periods that occurred, there were only 3 occurrences when standards were not met. And when averaged over the duration of the pilot program, only 1 standard was not met. Overall, we had no observed or reported incidences of dogs harassing wildlife or dogs entering sensitive habitat. And of the approximately 1,000 dogs observed, there were only 9 seen off trail and only 2 occurrences where a dog had unwanted interaction with a person. No dog attacks were observed or reported during the pilot program, but I do think it's important to note that I have been made aware of an incident that may have occurred after the pilot program concluded. Looking at the data, I'm really happy with the results of the pilot program. I think it shows strong compliance, and upon being presented to the Board of Supervisors, they agreed, and as a result, directed the department to seek a coastal development permit, which is what is before you today. However, it is important to note that the continuation of this use is dependent on compliance. I think the data on this slide indicates that we had strong compliance during the pilot program, but if this starts to change, and we start observing that park users are not complying, the department reserves the right to reevaluate this use. Earlier, I stated we wanted this pilot to show that different user groups could cohabitate and do so in a way that still protects resources. And I think we've shown that that can occur. But in order for that to continue, we have to continue to have strong compliance. And I want to take a minute. I went out yesterday with staff to make dog contacts, and we went out there specifically to make sure we were doing enforcement, to specifically make sure we were educating, and if necessary, we were prepared to write citations. And we did come across several individuals with dogs, and one of the things that really stuck with me is we heard from people who expressed concern about this use, and we talked to dog owners who expressed the same concern, which is showing that when I receive emails from individuals about a limited number of irresponsible dog owners, that's not reflective of the entire dog community. It's reflective of individuals, and I think the data on this slide shows that as well. And that's why I wanted to take a specific moment to capture that, which is we've continued to have strong compliance, and I think we will continue to have strong compliance, and that occasionally you will have some bad actors that it is our goal to engage with and correct that behavior. Showing here is when we compare the monitoring data with the pilot program data, and what we can see is because of education, because of enforcement, and because of engagement, almost across the board, we saw better behavior during the pilot than we did after the pilot. The one instance is dogs off trail, but everywhere else we saw. Sorry about that. I heard an echo. But other than that, we saw better compliance, and I think that that's important, a very important takeaway. Across the board, what we're seeing throughout our system is an increase in visitors and visitorship, and Quarry Park is no different. When you look from May 2020 through May 2023, we saw a similar increase, and I think we had a couple different things coincide with that period. One being COVID, one being the pump track, and one being dogs. And so we did see an increase in visitors, but we're not able to specifically pinpoint which of those is the driving force. But what we are able to show, which I think is important, and it speaks to the concern made that allowing off-leash dogs at Quarry Park would make Quarry Park exclusively a dog park, is that when compared to the baseline data, we actually see a greater percentage of individuals without dogs in Quarry Park than with dogs. So while we're seeing an increase in the numbers of people without dogs, we actually saw a decrease in the numbers of people with dogs. I think the data speaks to the fact that allowing this use did not make Quarry Park exclusively a dog park. And then I think the other thing that's interesting is when compared to pre-pilot program data or baseline data, we didn't really see a shift in the percentage of individuals having dogs off leash versus on leash. So really happy again with the compliance that we observed. Very happy to see that various user groups continue to use Quarry Park, and based on the observations made, based on reports and lack of report of certain incidences coming in, we're very happy with this, and we have submitted our application pursuant to Board of Supervisors directive to seek a coastal development permit, which again is what is before you all today. And so with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that the community may have.
Let me suggest a protocol here. First, I want to go around to the council and see if they have questions of Nick. Then I'll open it up for public comment, including reading one letter I was asked to read. Then there's a proposed letter I put on the website, and then the council, after public comment, can discuss what action it wishes to take. So first, going around the table of the council, wishing to comment or question. Anne, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question about the areas that are designated dog-free. It looks like almost the entire park is open to the dogs, like just because there are some people either afraid of dogs or don't want to interact. Can you show me on the map those areas that are basically dog-free?
Yeah, happy to. Let me pull that back up here.
Thank you.
So there we go. So yeah, so where dogs are not allowed is the reservoir in the back and at the playground.
Okay. And is there a picnic? It looks like there's a little picnic area. Is that also, are the dogs allowed there, or is that included in the playground?
So yeah, great question. So that's in the playground, and so dogs are not allowed in that fenced-in area.
Okay. Okay.
Was that it, Anne?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of just how much of the park is for the the dogs, because there have been some questions from some of the public, and I hate to admit this, but I don't spend much time here, so I'm not really familiar with the park. But when some of the residents have asked for areas to remain dog-free, one of them was the 2-acre tot lot and the 2-acre playground area above the tot lot. So I'm assuming that is what's included in the area that is, doesn't have the dogs.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's two issues at play in the letter that or the comments you're referring to, and so the 2-acre tot lot is enclosed in the green chain link fence, and then the meadow area adjacent to it is not enclosed in a chain link fence, but it does have some split rail between it and the parking lot, and so dogs are certainly not allowed in the chain link fence area, and really dogs aren't allowed off trail. And one of the things I am doing, because I have heard from a select few regarding that meadow area next to the playground, and so something that I have done is started to reach out to some community groups who do use this area and who are, I'll say, representative of families in the coast side to really understand what impact is occurring, if at all.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Of course.
I was going to bring up Burnett Silveria's letter later, but let's go around for the council. Dan?
Yes, thank you, Nicholas, for giving this report tonight. And so just for the record, I'd like everybody, by the way, just for the record, there's, let's see, there's 8 community members in the room, 1 supervisor aide and 2 PCTV people. So I am a staunch advocate for allowing dogs to be able to be walked off leash. I'm also pretty much a lifetime bicyclist. You know, I like to ride trails. I have ridden my mountain bike through Quarry Park several times. I wouldn't say I do it extremely frequently, but I have a strong belief that well, actually, the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to learn from both you, Nicholas, and any potential members in the community that would like to share their opinion. I have a strong belief that cyclists and dog walkers with off-leash dogs can cohabitate in you know, well. But I will say, I do know I have experienced certain cyclists just don't like to stop. And, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, we just all have to get along. You know, maybe you know, yeah, both have to kind of give in a little bit. So, but I'm bringing this up now because I'm very interested in anything that you have heard, Nicholas, and anything that anybody that you know, walks the dog in Quarry Park has heard also. And I didn't want to get into suggesting, you know, which trails are designated for only dogs, designated for only. I didn't want to get into that, but maybe, I don't know if that might be an option. Well, why don't we just start the conversation on this regard? Nicholas?
Yeah, Dan, thank you for the question. So I'm going to take the latter part first, if you don't mind, the trail designation. So we are not of the mind at the San Mateo County Parks Department that is a feasible approach. With that said, East Bay Regional Parks is looking at exactly that. They're looking at designated trails, and on certain days they're open to dogs, on certain days they're open to equestrians, and on certain days they're open to bikes. We're taking a little bit different of approach at Quarry Park, in the sense that we are working on mountain bike trail standards. And so we do think that mountain bikes should be on trails that are specifically designated and designed to support that use, whereas hikers, both with and without dogs, should be on other types of trails. Not to say that there's not going to be some cohabitating, but I think there's a different approach that we've taken in that, and that's a long-term vision that we're working to recognize. I will say, when I talk to members of the dog community and when I talk to members of the mountain bike community, they seem to be supporters of one another. I think they both feel as though historically they haven't had access to land. And so they have kind of come together to recognize and support one another. That's not to say that's across the board. That's not to say all of them feel that way. That's just some of the conversations I've had. I also think it's really important to note, Dan, that in my time with the San Mateo County Parks system, there is no user group that has 100% good actors and compliance. Whether we're talking about hikers, whether we're talking about campers, whether we're talking about picnickers, whether we're talking about people using playgrounds, people with dogs, people on bikes. There are always going to be individuals who are irresponsible in complying with the rules, at whatever their use is. And I think we need to be careful about penalizing an entire community and user group because of that. So that's a long-winded way of saying I agree that mountain bikes and dogs and hikers and picnickers and people going to playgrounds can all cohabitate. And I think they've done that at Quarry Park. And I think that'll continue to happen.
Thank you.
Dan, can you look across the room there? Are there other council members who want to have a question or a comment at this time?
Want to raise?
I'm up there all the time. I don't have any problems with any dogs. And I'm biking and hiking and doing all that stuff. So I don't see any issues with off-leash dogs. I don't like riding my bike or stepping in dog waste, but that's a whole nother story. So, but again, the I don't have any issues. I think it's fine the way it is. I just don't see any problems. And I'm up there a lot. So.
I guess I'll go. Hey, Nicholas, first of all,
Hey,
great
guys.
presentation.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, how many acres of parks are there in San Mateo County ballpark?
In the San Mateo County Park System or in all of the jurisdictional boundaries of San Mateo County?
Actually, if you know both those numbers, I'd be interested in both.
I don't know the latter one. I was really hoping you weren't asking about it.
All right, just
I
give me
can
the
tell
one
you.
know.
I can tell you the San Mateo County Park System has approximately 16,000 acres.
Okay. Out of those ballpark, how many allow, even if this were to go through, how many of them would allow off-leash dogs?
Quarry Park.
That's it. Okay. So
Correct.
Okay. So to me, it sort of seems like, there's always going to be the three groups of people, right? People who are just not comfortable with dogs under any circumstance, people who are only comfortable with them if they're on leash, and then people who are just comfortable with them off leash. I happen to be one of the people who's comfortable with them off leash. So I think if Quarry Park is literally the only place in the entire county where you can go and have your dog off leash and have it be in accordance with the rules, I think that should be I think we should put it through because it's the only place where that's going to be allowed, and there needs to be some place where people can go. And even within that park, since there have been areas designated where there will not be dogs allowed, so that can be the place for people who aren't comfortable with them, and then places where the dogs have to be on leash. I think you've done a good job in figuring out how to balance everybody's needs here in the park, and so I think it's a good program, and I appreciate the work that you and your team did putting it together.
Greg, can I add something?
Thanks,
Can I add just something real
If it's
fast?
brief, Dan, we have 30 people waiting.
Very brief. Yeah. So, Nicholas, as you know, the whole coast side is a big biking community. And I guess I just want to say quickly that please direct me if something's already written down, but I'd like to see some kind of level of language of encouraging respect for those very few bad actors that refuse to slow down and muscle through and possibly nearly hit somebody. Whatever you take the first step could possibly be modeled, because there's also the same problem on the California Coastal Trail and even on the sidewalks. I guess it could be everywhere. So you could model, you could be add to this pilot program and really kind of set some language about how cyclists really should respect yield. Somebody says here, just show respect for other humans enjoying this wonderful community that we have when they're on their bicycle, specifically, speed and passing and how close they pass and all that, and proper.
Any other council members? Claire, did you speak?
I think I had the same questions as Ann, so I'm okay.
All right, and Kimberly is en route. All right, so as the last council member, I want to just admit my bias here. Okay, thanks, Kimberly. Did you have any questions for Nicholas on the dog issue, or want to make any comments?
I don't have questions because I didn't hear the full presentation, but I do want to say that I appreciate the efforts County Parks has been making and has made over the last couple of years. I do think that there's still not enough enforcement across the board. I think that's continues to be an issue with county parks, that enforcement is really important for those times when you do have people who are not following the rules. There are some local people who I see out and about who have continuously not followed the rules. And I think those people need to be called out because they spoil it for the others. I am fine if the community decides that Quarry Park is our local dog park. You know, that's great. I am one of the people who do not go to parks to see dogs. And I have dogs who have been part of my family for many years growing up. I love dogs. It's not about that. I view it as an exclusionary issue because for whatever reason, someone, you know, whether they've had trauma or whatever it might be, you're excluding them from the park because they cannot go there with, you know, to be around dogs. And if that's our decision, that's fine. But, you know, it's the same as being in a room with smokers, right? You can't choose not to smoke because you're in a room with 5 smokers and you're the only non-smoker. So your right to clean air is violated. And that's the way I view it. It's an exclusionary issue. So I think those are my thoughts. I think enforcement really important for this issue because this comes up over and over. And county parks, if it means that you need to bring in more rangers or whatever it means to allocate, then that's what you should do. So those are my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Yeah, and Kimberly, if I can take sorry, Greg, if I can take a minute just to address on that. So yesterday there were 6 of us who were in Quarry Park specifically to do dog enforcement. And we went throughout the park and every person with a dog we engaged with, and we used it as an opportunity to frankly thank those dog owners who are being responsible and following the rules. We used it as an opportunity to engage with those who were in no means violating the rule egregiously or deliberately, but maybe needed a little tightening up on some of the behavior, and we were fully prepared to issue citations if we saw anything that was egregious. I will be going out with 5 other staff members again this week, and this is something that we will be doing on an ongoing basis. I want to be clear, we are not going out with quotas. We are not going out to just hit any person with a dog with citation. I was very pleased to see the behavior that I saw yesterday. But again, if there is someone acting in an egregious way, then certainly we are prepared to issue citations. And when I speak to members of the dog owner community who are in Quarry Park, they're actually very appreciative of the fact that we're out there doing that. And again, I'm out there with my staff, right? So this isn't something that I'm telling people to go do, and you know, I'm out there with them. So certainly if you see us out there, feel free to flag us down and say hello. And this is something that we'll continue to do as necessary.
All right. I'd like to make a couple of comments and try and hopefully frame some discussion here. I also have to read a letter, an email from a constituent, and I want to talk about a couple other letters we received. So I do own a dog. He's very independent, so he's always on leash. I use Quarry Park about once a week. To me, the problem is an ambiguity that stems from the grounds outside of the fenced-in playground, but inside that, what did you call that? Rail fence? So
Split rail, chain link fence.
There's a split rail fence next to the chain link fence, and it has a water fountain in it. There are people who repeatedly throw the ball and play with their dogs in there off leash. And there also is an area adjacent to the new pump track where people throw their dogs balls and so forth. It's been pointed out by Burnett and others that the dogs are supposed to be on leash, although they're allowed in that area, but they're off leash. So Nicholas, would you clarify, is that the correct statement, that those areas are supposed to be on leash, but dogs are allowed? You're muted.
You're muted.
3 years in and I'm still bad at this. So, Greg, let me know if this answers your question. So, as I said, dogs are not allowed in the chain link fence area ever, period. They will always not allowed. And it's important to understand the reason for that is because inside that chain link fence is a playground. That means kids are running around. And so a dog could misinterpret a situation. A dog could want to play with a kid. And, if that kid doesn't know the dog, that could lead to a really bad situation. So that's why we've made it very clear throughout the park system. At any park, no dogs are allowed in the playground. Outside of that, dogs are to remain on trail. And so whether your dog is on leash or off leash, it's supposed to stay on trail. So I think that's probably the best way I can answer that.
All right, so that would imply then that the split rail fence and that small meadow, dogs could be on leash, but not off leash because it's not a trail. Okay, it's gray area. On the other side, near the pump track, again, there is a trail that goes by the pump track and next to the meadow. So are you saying the dogs could only be on the trail and not on the grass?
Yeah, I mean, functionally, that's what I'm saying. I think one thing I would add, sorry, Greg, is that I would also add, and the map that I have in the presentation was created prior to the pump track. Dogs are also not allowed in the pump track. Sorry,
yeah, this fence. I got it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so I have received, and the council as a whole, I believe, has received a bunch of emails. We started out with some complaints. In particular, I want to mention the fellow who was bitten, if he's not in the audience. But I was requested to read a letter from Nicole and John Scary. Are Nicole and John in the audience and able to speak for themselves?
Yes.
All right. If they're not, then I'm going to just.
Nicole's here. Nicole is here in the room.
All right. All right. Then I would ask Nicole to speak for herself. Then I will not read this email because you're there to speak it. I do want to bring up, though, the fellow who had mentioned Reginald Sedgwick, and he mentioned that he was bitten by a dog 2 weeks ago. Black Doberman mix ran up to him off leash and nipped his hand. He said he's had a countless number of dogs rush him off leash at Quarry Park, possibly because I have cats in my clothes, smell of them, I don't know. And he stopped going there for walks. He and his partner don't feel safe. And he's grown to have a healthy fear of dogs. So that was, I think, the most negative email we received. We also received quite a number of emails that did not ask to be read aloud, but were in support of off-leash dog walking, pointing out the thing that Gus brought up. I mean, the flip side of exclusion and inclusion is there's only this one place for dog owners to exercise their dogs off leash in the park system. So, if we exclude that, then there's an issue about the dog owners. So I think there's a discussion point here that we can come back to after we hear from the community that has to do with a more precise definition of where dogs are allowed off leash and on leash. It's clear they're not allowed in the fenced areas. It's clear they are allowed on trail, but some of the conflicts are occurring in these meadows. All right, so I'd like to go around to the community, and I'm going to have to time people because we have a ton of them. I think we should give preference to the people who are physically present in the room and start with them. So if you don't mind, Dan, would you recognize the people who are in the room and let them come up to the microphone, and I will time them?
So we already have some people that have given speaker slips. There's just some simple 3x5 cards. If you're a member of the community would like to speak, just please put your name down and that you're going to be speaking on item 4A. So we already have 2 here, and it looks like 2 more are being filled out as I'm speaking. What would you like to do? Would you like to call?
I'd like you to call the people who are in the room because you're there to referee it.
Okay, I'll do it in order then. Start with Chris Johnson.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Chris Johnson. I'm a resident of El Granada. And in fact, was a member of the dog committee starting in 2016 when it was originally formed to look at county policy in all of the parks. And then I continued on through the entire duration of the dog committee as we came up with these criteria. So I feel very strongly about this issue. I'm glad we have at least one pilot program. Per the letter, I guess that's the item that's up for decision today. Per the letter, I agree with it for what it says, which says supports permanent adoption of the off-leash dog walking or availability in Quarry Park. And I hope that that passes. I'm not too thrilled with the yellow part that says an additional enforcement of XYZ based on information that we've received from Nicholas that most of the evaluation criteria has been met. And I say most, and okay, not 100% across the board, but I mean, if there was a statement about bad actors, okay, if we're going to hold bad actors accountable, then I guess we should just take all cars off the roads. Okay, this is going to happen in any situation. And we've got the evaluation criteria that was several years in the making with lots of benchmarking and expert witness testimony to get to that. So I'm not sure that I appreciate the under the condition that additional enforcement of XYZ. I personally don't feel that that statement is necessary.
Seconds.
I'm sorry, what, Greg?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. Okay. I take exception with Michelle's comment or Kimberly's comment, excuse me, about exclusionary. What is exclusionary is to have only one park in the entire system where there's off-leash walking. I think there's only 2 or 3 that allow dogs at all. And even with her metaphor or her analogy, that person could leave the room as everybody could go to a different park like Pillar Point Bluffs, which was X'd off of this, supposed to be the second pilot program. So I don't appreciate that comment. What I do think that we should be discussing going forward is rather than restricting and especially ministerial decisions, not based on years of study and expert testimony, I think what we should be discussing is expansion of this to additional county park properties. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thanks, Chris. And I probably should have done this before. So I just shared my screen and I put up a draft of an email or of a letter based on what I read in the comments received from the public. I drafted a proposed letter which says merely, the MCC supports the permanent adoption of off-leash dog walking provisions at Quarry Park in El Granada. And then, based on the discussion and sense of council tonight, I put in brackets the possibility of adding the phrase, under the condition that additional enforcement of X and Y is provided in locations Z. And I think you're going to see that's going to come out in the
and
discussion.
it creates a secondary fission reaction.
Yeah.
Which
That's
would have.
I don't know about the fission reaction, Steve. I'm going to mute you. Okay, so that was Chris. Who else in the room, Dan?
So next we have Bob Schmidt.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity here. I want to take exception to Ms. Williams' statement on enforcement. This is a program, one of a kind, just started. I suggest rather than enforcement, it's education continually. And Nick in Midcoast, we have a big park, and what's the best way to educate people on dogs? Offer some training to these people. Dog trainers need facilities. I think we need some, well, for instance, Lisa Rhodes trained me how to train my husky, 92 pounds. I use the Quarry Park every day. There's nothing like a good trained dog. Not that there's exceptions to that. My boy meets an intact male, I know there'll be a problem. So I'm aware of that, but there's unique situations like that. So we need education, not enforcement. a puppy running up to an adult dog's gonna get put down. It's gonna be misinterpreted. So that's where I'm going. I'm gonna leave some time on the table for anybody who goes overboard on it. But I want to leave Lisa Rhodes, one of the premier dog trainers in the area, Shamrock Ranch, with you. And Nick, if you're still on board on the screen there, I'd like to see some county program endorse dog training at Quarry Park, classes for night classes and maybe a Saturday morning class. We have the area, and I tell you, the benefits will be fine. And for those of you who aren't dog walkers, leash them if you see them. You should know what that means. If a leash dog's coming at you, you should leash yours. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping your comments brief. Dan, next.
We have, pardon if I mispronounce, Nicole Skirn?
Yes, Nicole Skirn.
Skirn, okay.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Nicole, and family and I have lived here in El Coronado for 23 years, and I've walked in the quarry ever since with our own 9 dogs up to date and 40 plus foster dogs. Since we don't live in our own island to have everything our way, we all need to learn to get along and respect one another, especially those who are different from us. If someone wants to walk without running into an off-leash dog, he, she, they can walk practically anywhere and everywhere on the coast outside of El Granada Park, Quarry Park. The choices for these folks are endless, unlike the choices for those of us who want to give our dogs the proper exercise off-leash. Like Nicholas Calderon, our park director, has stated, this has been an exhausting process. However, the different agencies and organizations from all different sectors of users did come to the conclusion that Quarry Park is a great choice for a San Mateo County off-leash park. This will be the only sanctioned off-leash park in the San Mateo County parks system. Then with proper signage, people will know that this is an off-leash park, and then they can make their decision to walk or not to walk in the quarry. Just like there are a few bad parents with parenting, there are always a few irresponsible dog owners who make bad choices, both of which are appalling to see. However, we should not let those few negative off-leash instances be the narrative that is the basis for lawmaking to punish all dogs. Again, this has been a well-documented study. To be mentally and physically well-balanced like people, most dogs have to have a chance to run, play, and socialize with their own kind in nature. And for many dogs and their owners, this cannot be done at the end of a leash, especially for physical disability people and older people with physical limitations. Many nearby municipalities have already implemented off-leash space in parks with great success, and I believe that we can do the same here. It's time for our community to do the same and to prioritize the well-being of our pets and our residents and the vibrancies of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we
Thank
have
you, Nicole.
Amy.
My name's Amy Tezza. I am a coastside resident for over 25 years. My family and I live in Moss Beach. And ever since adopting a dog 6 years ago when I retired, I've been walking in Quarry Park very regularly. I also represent Coastside Dog, which is an all-volunteer community group, which is dedicated to preserving the rural and dog-friendly way of life that we have on San Mateo Coast. We do this by promoting responsible dog walking and advocating for dog-friendly trails and beaches. We also participate in regular park cleanups, both formally and informally, with the Parks Department. And we manage a couple of poop stations too. So we have been enthusiastic supporters of the off-leash dog pilot, as are a majority of the community who commented during the process. And the pilot project was very successful. Board of Supervisors approved it. And I was very surprised to hear that there were people that have had bad interactions with dogs in Quarry Park. I've never had any issues at Quarry Park, and I walk there very regularly. My friends who have been walking Quarry Park forever have never reported any issues. And the pilot project reported only 2 incidents of negative, I'm not sure what they were, over the year-long pilot. So, and I did some informal polls. I just walked around Quarry Park with my dog and I asked people, hey, have you had any issues with off-leash dogs or dog owners? And no one has. But I don't want to negate the experience that some people have. I have a couple of suggestions. I know that there's been some people with issues saying it didn't happen. One thing, the signage needs to be improved. It needs to be at the trailheads. It needs to be large, and it needs to include all of the regulations. Maybe, stop and read before you go, a phone number. Enforcement has been discussed, and people who have interactions with dogs need to report them, because what I was told is, oh, so many people don't report it. People should report it. That way we know what we're dealing with. I think we can do this safely. We can have all sorts of users in this park, and thank you.
I want to apologize. I understand 2 minutes is a short time, but with 30 people commenting, we're talking about an hour plus the Slack time in between.
Yep.
And this is just the first of 3 agenda items.
Well,
All right,
now,
who's next in the room?
That's it in the room, and I only see 4 hands on Zoom.
All right, well, I'll take care of the ones on Zoom. Sid, your hand's been up the longest?
Thank you. Basically, I have some questions for Nicholas. And it has to do with any future dog parks planned. I'll read all my questions and then he can answer, so I don't use up all my time with him talking. Secondly, I think there has been some issues with the area that's being called the Meadow. It's not, I guess it only has a split rail fence or something, and limited, or if any, signage. So maybe, since I did notice when I went to the San Mateo County board meeting yesterday that they had like $14 million allocated for the 5-year Tinities Creek project, and 26 million for flood park. Maybe you could toss a little bit of fencing and signage money towards fencing it off and putting up no play area for dogs where the kids play, and not just the playground, but the meadow beyond. And then I did have a question about enforcement. I mostly walk in Seal Cove, but I don't know. I asked this of Hannah one time, and I didn't see it in your presentation. How many citations, not just chit chats, but actual citations, did you guys write during the pilot study period? And do you ever issue dog citations for off leash in other parks? So I can repeat those questions if you didn't jot them all down, but maybe you can answer that for me, Nicholas.
Thanks, Sid.
Sure.
Yeah, I think briefly, do we issue citations? Yes. We have. Do we issue them throughout the system? Yes.
How many?
Did we issue any during the pilot? No. But if you look at the data would indicate that there were no egregious violations that would warrant a citation. And so that's why no citations were issued during the pilot. And I think our experience is that education is for non-egregious violations, education is really the best approach, and it's our first line of defense. And if you look at the data from the pilot program, I would argue that it's effective. But we do issue citations if necessary. I couldn't tell you how many citations in total have been issued throughout the San Mateo County Park system. I don't have that figure off the top of my head or readily available in front of me. But I do know we issue them. And again, I was out there yesterday with 5 other rangers. And again, we were fully prepared to issue citations for egregious violations at that time, and we'll be heading out again later this week. And we'll be prepared to issue citations for egregious violations. And and we'll continue to do that as long as necessary.
And about the meadow fence,
Did any unanswered questions, type them into the chat and we'll come back to them. I want to recognize the next person, who's Betsy Caffel.
God.
Betsy, unmute yourself, go.
Hi there. Thank you for letting me speak. I just wanted to say I'm a resident of Moss Beach, and I frequent the Quarry Park frequently with my dog. And the thing about the bicycles, I have never had an issue with bicycles being at Quarry being a problem. Everyone has always been courteous, but I always tend to walk in the morning. And so there's probably less bicycles in the morning than there are in the afternoon. So, but from my experience, bicycles are actually very courteous. We all, communicate with each other, and it's never had an issue. The other thing was we had some infractions on poop in the park, and Quarry Park is a huge park. And it's also quite different than the other parks because there's a lot of eucalyptus. So there's a lot of leaves and twigs and branches that look a lot like poop. So I've been there times where, my dog has pooped, and it's very hard to identify poop from the fallen leaves and twigs. So just, if you're at Blufftop Park, it's much easier to identify it. It's just because of the fauna that's there at Quarry that makes it a little bit higher number of poops, I would assume, because of that. The other thing too is I have not had any confrontations when walking my dog when I greet other people who have dogs either on or off leash. Most people communicate well in advance. You see another dog and approach, and if your dog is friendly, and it's self-monitoring. People, are courteous. And one of the things that one of the members had said that I do not agree with is comparing dogs off leash to secondhand smoke. I'm sorry, dogs don't cause cancer. So I just don't agree with that comparison. But I want to say that I just think Quarry Park really needs to have off leash because there's no other options there in the county. There's very few options of where you can walk your dog. So it would really be nice to be like other county parks. Thank you.
Chris, Tyler.
There we go. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go please.
Thanks very much. And I appreciate your bringing up this this topic. I feel a certain kinship with a lot of the dog walkers and some of the mountain bikers in the group. I was a early mountain biker back in the 80s, and we were not welcome on the trails with the hikers. And since I think we've discovered how to live with one another. I'm too old and feeble to mountain bike anymore, but I am well enough to walk with my dog, and I'm of retirement age, and we got a dog 7 years ago, and we found a whole new community that we met on the trails. It replaced a void that was left as our kids grew up, and we lost track of their families and friends in sports and schools. So we owe a debt of gratitude to the dog in our home. We also gave up a lot. Most of the trails that I used to walk with our kids are closed to us with our dog. Fitzgerald was a regular daily favorite. I haven't been there in 7 years. And that brings up a giant equity issue that sort of mirrors Ms. Williams' argument about exclusion. Nearly half of us on the coast are dog owners, and we are concentrated on 8% of the county parks and trails. If there is too much pressure on a single park by dog walking, the solution is to expand access commensurate with other communities. But in the meantime, I want to say, a word about fear of dogs. I completely understand.
15 seconds.
I had a paper route. I was chased by a particular dog If there had been social media back then, I would have portrayed that dog as a child-eating killer. And today, a few scared people make a very loud noise. I think it's important for us to understand one another, and let's be reasonable and share our open spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Now we have somebody titled iPad. I do not know the name of that person, but their hand is raised.
Hi, sorry. My name is Brittany Ruffier. I've been a co-starter here for 38 years in El Granada. I also have a pet care business and I've been walking dogs for 5 years. For dogs to be well-adjusted members of our community, they need the chance to run, play, and socialize with their own kind, as well as interact with strangers. However, for most dogs and owners, this just can't always be done at the end of a leash. It's a fact that behavioral problems and especially destructive behavior are commonly a result of not getting enough exercise. Most people, especially true for older people or people with physical limitations or physical disabilities, just cannot properly give their young dogs or puppies high energy breeds enough exercise while on leash. The end results, pent-up energy manifests itself in aggression, unruly, uncontrollable young dogs that are then dumped at shelters. To mentally and physically thrive in our society, it is crucial to have a place for the dogs to exercise naturally and interact with their environment. We are only asking for one place in our community. Surrounding community park systems have many off-leash areas with great success. San Mateo County parks have none that allow dogs on leash, roughly 10% of trails. I believe that this will be the first in San Mateo County for off-leash recreation. It is time for our community to have an off-leash park for well-being of others and our dogs and their families. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight to speak on this, and especially thank you to Nicholas.
Thank you for your cogent and timely comments. Next up is Devin Squalia.
Hello.
Devin, are you going to speak? You have a question?
Stand by, Greg. Our screen went black. We heard your voice though. Can you speak again?
I'm still here.
Well, we don't see you, so
that may be a good thing.
I can see you, Greg. We can see you virtually.
Oh, you can see it at home?
Yeah. The Zoom people can see me. I can see the Zoom people. Well, as long as the people who want to speak virtually can be heard, I think we can continue in good order.
Yeah,
Devin,
go
would you
ahead.
go ahead.
Keep
Make your
the
comment,
speaking
Devin. Devin, please go ahead.
Will that interfere with the whole meeting, or will be?
Point of order here. We have a transcript, right? I don't know what the recording options are, but we have a transcript which is being recorded. I can see it in real time. So this still could be published as a public meeting, even if the video has a problem. Does PCTV want to do something? What's going on there, Dan? All right, I'm guessing that they are trying to reset something in the meeting room. So I'm going to suggest we just wait here for a minute until we hear from them. I'll ask Dan for an update.
Hey, Greg, can you hear me?
I can now, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm operating. This meeting is operating independently on my laptop. Anybody else on? So what's happening now is I don't think that this laptop is sufficient to run the meeting. Jason with PCTV is currently trying to reboot the system, and Jason, I'm not certain to the degree of interruption of this whole meeting. There was a sign of a weak signal. I don't know if that was cattle. Looks like we may be.
There you go.
Any others?
Oh, yeah.
Solve the feedback problem. Hey, Greg, we're back up and running. So just continue where you left off.
All right, I was trying to recognize Devin Squalia, if I'm pronouncing your name right, Devin, so you could make your public comment for 2 minutes. Devin, you're not muted. Your hand is raised, but you're not speaking. So I'm going to lower your hand for now, raise it again in the future if you wish to speak. Fran Pollard, I recognize you now for your 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. Yes, Fran Pollard, El Granada. And I'm totally with the off-leash dogs on the trails. Burnett and I submitted a letter about this whole issue, and lots of pictures that have been taken over the years of all the activities in the park, and mainly in the 2 acres, which that seems to be the bugaboo here, is the 2 acres above the tot lot. That when Quarry Park was formed, which was created by we in the community, my group, MPL, Midcoast Parklands. And when county took it, and we managed it for 15 years, we created the park and managed it. And it was all one big parcel, that 4 acres. Then the county divided it in half with that chain link fence. And now just says that the dogs don't belong in the tot lot area, but they do run around in the tot lot area. And mostly people are playing and using the 2 acres above as a dog park. Every day there are people playing in there with multiple dogs. So I'm glad to hear, Nicholas, that you're monitoring now and going to give citations. Give citations. I hope that includes that area. I hope one of the rangers will be around the tot lot and the playground, and that's called the playground area. That's not the meadow. The meadow is the big area by where you put the pumps track. That is the meadow, and people have always played there with their dogs. People who can't climb the hills and walk the long trails want to play like a dog park. And I'm sorry to hear, I thought you said that you were going to open more parks to dogs. So I'm sorry to hear tonight that we're the only one. That is putting a lot of pressure on this one little park in all of San Mateo County. So I hope you will open more parks to dogs. And that's all we're asking, is to just keep those 4 little acres off limits to dogs, period, whether they're on leash or off leash. If they're on leash and they just walk through it, fine. But people stand around with their dogs on leash, and the dogs do what dogs will do. So that is mostly for people, parties. People lay their blankets down and lay on it. Groups come with babies in that area. You've seen the pictures, or I hope you saw the pictures of all the activities that go on in that 2 acre parcel above the tot lot, not just in the tot lot. And so I hope that's all we're asking. I don't think it's asking too much to keep the 4 acres free of dogs out of all the hundreds that the dogs have. Thank you.
Okay, Burnett.
Okay, first I would like to say I support the off-leash program in Quarry Park, but it's not a no dog or off-leash issue. The park has no dog off-leash and on-leash areas in the park. The area above the tot lot is a play area, and dogs need to be on leash in that area. To do that, the rules need to be enforced. And if you read the controlling county ordinance, enforcement includes interaction and education of visitors by requiring off-leash dogs to be leashed or moved to off-leash areas or to an off-leash area. But it also includes citation for egregious actions. During the master plan process for Quarry Park last year, a group of us supported a dog park for off-leash dog play in Quarry Park. That was turned down. we were told that since the Berman Strip project had a dog park, Quarry Park would not have one. So it's been thought of, been mentioned, and been turned down. Thank you.
Burnett, thank you very much.
Greg, Greg, just so you
Dan,
know, we
hold
have,
on. You have more people in the room?
yes, we have one more person in the room that has not spoken yet, would like to speak.
Please recognize them.
Okay, Karen Schmidt.
Okay, my name is Karen Schmidt, and I've been in Granada many years, but I've been walking dogs, my dogs, for over 45 years, everywhere you can be around here, and I've had horses here and every kind of deal. We've gone over this so much, and we've done so much work on trying to get this moving. So I say tonight, let's give it a chance and let's go for it and see what comes of it. We all talk about how this and this and this and this and this, and we've heard it for years, since 2016. Let's give it a chance. Everybody here thinks it's a good idea. The worst thing can happen is it could like go totally wrong and fail. The best thing is if we see it really happening, we can deal with it with education and whatever we need to do to improve it. But we need to get it going to see what it really becomes of what we feel could be really successful. So I think let's let it happen, make it happen, and see what we come up with. It's time for that to happen. Thank you, guys.
Yay.
Thank you, Nicholas, as well.
Thank you for your comments. All right, Devin, we're going to try and recognize you again. Can you unmute? You are unmuted. Go ahead, Devin.
Yay, I'm unmuted. I just want to just say yes to the last person who came up to the podium. Totally aligned with everyone. I don't want to repeat and take up more time, but I really am here to just vote for us to move forward and support the permit, and let's just do it. It's I've been a resident of El Granada and the coast side for 15 years. I was involved with getting the pilot program up. I multiple times went down to Redwood City. So glad that it was successful, the pilot. Thank you, Nicholas, for everything that you've done and the community, and let's just do it. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I do not see any other community members with their hands raised. So I would like to take a minute to frame potential actions for the council to consider. Close public comment. And then
Greg,
Dan, anybody else in the
not
public
me.
there to speak?
Not me.
Hey,
It's
Greg,
Scott. Scott would like to speak.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing.
Scott,
okay with
Scott, the council is going to be recognized as we go around the room. So you're going to get to speak right now. All right.
Okay.
We're going to go around the entire council.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to suggest that there are possibly 4 things the council could do tonight on this agenda item. One is to take no action, write no letter, make no statement. The other is to issue a letter endorsing the off-leash program to continue. Another is to oppose it. And the last one is to approve it with some conditions. So I'd like to go around the council and hear what you each have to say. And in the course of that, we can decide whether we do anything with the letter I'm showing, how we might edit it, and go from there. So the council members can raise their hand or I'll just ask you in series. What do you want to do? All right, I'll start with Ann. She's an A.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. So I think, I think most people are in support of this. However, I think there should be some restrictions. I think it's important that we do recognize people who don't want to encounter the dogs, because there are some, and particularly children. I'm a registered veterinary technician as well as a dog walker. So believe me, I'm very much in support of dogs, but I also believe in safety. And one thing that I have encountered as a dog walker, especially, is when I do have a dog on leash, if there's a dog off leash, I've had incidences with the dog that I have getting aggressive. And especially when another dog who's off leash approaches them, and that does happen. So I think there's well, I'm just, you can say whatever you want. I'm just saying that I think that there has to be a balance. And so the areas that were in question, I think particularly brought up earlier, the 2 acres, the area that the dogs were not supposed to be in as well. I would just like to see that enforced. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And anybody who's a reasonable dog owner should want to stay on trail and be with other, dog walkers. So I don't see the problem there. A lot of communities do have dog parks, and you can take your dog to dog parks if that's what you want. So to tell people that they can't come to a park and walk because they're afraid of dogs or don't want to encounter dogs, and to tell them that they have to go somewhere else, I don't think that's a reasonable response. I think that this is something like Kimberly tried to say, and I think others have tried to say, that this has to be a park for everyone. This is not just for dog walkers or just for people who don't want dogs. We have to all coexist. And I think to be able to do that appropriately, making sure that there's good signage, letting people know where they can and can't walk dogs, where dogs need to be on leash, just things like that. I think education is really important, and being respectful of everyone. And I think that's really what's important. So I don't want to just say blanketly, yes, we support this. I would like to say support it with the conditions that, people do respect the specific areas that they are supposed to be in, and that education is the priority for those who are not following the rules. Thanks.
Okay, Ann, you were A. C is Claire. If we go in alphabetical order, C would be Claire.
Okay. Okay. I think we should send this letter. I think that it sounds as though the major bone of contention is that area north or east, I guess, of the playground. And I've been in that area with my dog on a leash. I thought it was okay. But it should be clarified as to whether there should be no dogs in there or just dogs on leashes. I also have a point of information. I'd like to know if there's a limit to how many dogs a person can have on walking in the park at one time.
Claire, Greg, you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Nick.
So an individual is allowed to have no more than 3 dogs in a county park. At no point in time can 2 of those dogs be off leash. At no point in time can more than 2 of the dogs be off leash. So if you have 3 dogs, 2 can be off leash, 1 has to remain on leash then. And that's because it was determined that more than 2 dogs, you're not able to keep track of what they're doing. You're not able to have voice and sight control. You can't tell if one's going in one direction to go to the bathroom and one's going the other direction to sniff something else out. And so those are the rules, and that's why the rules were set up that way.
Okay. I think that would be useful information to put on a sign someplace. So just improvement in signage and improvement in delineating what the use of that area next to the playground is supposed to be. Otherwise, I would support it.
All right. Next would be G for Gus in alphabetical. Oh, Dan, sorry. D for Dan. You would be next.
Wow. You can hear me, right? Greg?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I'm gonna make my recommendation that we support the program completely for now with no further restrictions beyond what County Parks has already established. I'll be honest with you, that I don't have the whole list here, but I'm trusting that they're all reasonable. And with a heavy emphasis on encouraging and make education easily available to anyone that is interested. And this includes proper signage. I'll be honest, I'm not a big sign fans, I'm not a big fan of signs, but sometimes they are needed, and it's how they are made and, how it could potentially distract from just the natural feel in the park. But yes, certainly, you know, I don't know, every single thing needs to be on it, maybe a handout, a small sign, a handout, hey, look at this. I'm not sure there, but definitely provide education, make it easy for anybody that's seeking it. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, the next letter in the alphabet would be G for Gus, if I have this right.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is this is the most knowledgeable group about this entire issue. And I think if you were a random member of the public who just happened to listen to this, you would leave this conversation knowing dogs are definitely not allowed in the playground, definitely are allowed on the trail, and have no idea what is actually the rule for all the other stuff. So I think to the extent we talk about enforcement would have to be education related, because I don't know how you enforce a rule when this group can't even clearly articulate what exactly the rule is. I do think in terms of enforcement, though, it is very clear the dogs are not allowed in the playground. Like it is very clearly demarcated. It is very clearly signed, and there is a very obvious reason why you wouldn't allow dogs in there. So I think very strict enforcement of the no dogs in the playground thing, I think, is perfectly reasonable. So I would suggest approving the letter with a clear statement of support for enforcement of no dogs in the playground area. Thanks.
K for Kimberly would be next.
Thanks. My connection is spotty here, so let's see how this goes. I think that Anne articulated beautifully what my thinking is on this, and so I just like to reiterate what Anne said. That makes total sense to me. I'm happy to support the letter, but I do think this is an access issue for those who, for whatever reason, don't want to go to a park to see a dog. And if this is the park for dogs, I'm happy to support that with better enforcement, improved signage, and better education. Thank you.
All right. I'm skipping myself to last. Scott, you are the last letter in the alphabet, S.
All right, thanks. I'll vote yes on this, but I want to ask two questions. What does a citation mean? Do I have to appear in court? Is there sentencing guidelines if you're convicted for this thing? What does a citation mean? Is it a nothing you just throw in the garbage with the dog poop on the way out of the park? So that's my first question. That's for Nicholas.
Well, you should always throw your dog poop away on your way out of the park, but your citation is a financial, it's a monetary fine. So your first citation, I believe, is $100, and then it increases from there for every citation after that. And it's written as a notice to appear. So if you wanted to challenge it, you certainly would have that opportunity. But it carries a financial penalty that, again, increases with every citation that you receive.
Okay, thanks. The other thing, people that's not particularly clear in this discussion is this is the only San Mateo County park that has this program going. There are many other spots in San Mateo that are designated off leash for dogs, right? Isn't that true? Like there's one in Foster City, there's one in Burlingame. They're designated dog parks. They're enclosed. They're enclosed. Yeah, those are designated dog parks for off leash. What are they called then?
Well, the Port Park's off leash, but we're not like the dog park that's fenced in just for dogs to go to the dog park. You drive, like Marin County has a lot of dog parks.
Yes.
It's all fenced in for dog parks, but this is where people can walk here that don't have dogs. Or mostly people in the dog parks go just to walk their dogs. You don't see people in there without a dog walking around the dog fields.
Okay. I'm good, Greg.
All right, so what I did was I drafted a potential amendment to edit into the letter that I wrote. And then we also had a suggestion from Chris Tyler. So if you can see the screen, there's a phrase in gold, under the condition additional enforcement of XY is provided in location Z. So I tried to word it to address the concerns from Fran and Burnett about those meadow areas. And he used the words that Nicholas cited, which is that the dogs can be off leash on the trails. So I wrote, under the condition that additional enforcement is provided to ensure that off leash dogs remain on trails. The suggestion Chris Tyler made was under the condition that there is improved signage, rules and regulations. So we could blend that into under the condition that additional enforcement and education is provided to ensure that off-leash dogs remain on the trails. And by education, I include signage. So if somebody is in favor of that, I will entertain a motion, but of course I will entertain anybody's motion. And we'll need, I'm going to stop sharing. And we're going to need a vote on something that makes
Greg,
sense. I understand.
Can you
Go
repeat
ahead.
your amendment, please?
I just pasted it into the chat. So it is under the condition that additional enforcement and education is provided to ensure that off-leash dogs remain on trails with a capital T. So that is my suggestion, but I wait for somebody to agree with me well enough to make a motion on this letter.
I have a question first.
Go, Kimberly.
With the first part, the first portion of that dogs on trails, could you clarify? I thought there were some trails that are dog free. So would you need to designate which trails are for off leash or on leash dogs?
Okay, so that's a good edit. So
Sorry,
we should
wait,
say sure
Greg.
on authorized trails.
Greg, I just want to make a point of clarification. Dogs are allowed on all of the trails. It's a matter of whether they're allowed on trail, on leash or off leash, but they're allowed on the trail, on all the trails. I just want to make sure that that's clear for the committee or for the council.
Okay. All right, so I now have a rewording here that I'll paste into the chat again. It says the MCC supports the permanent adoption of off-leash dog walking provisions at Quarry Park in El Granada under the condition that additional enforcement and education is provided to ensure that off-leash dogs remain on authorized trails. Kimberly, that was your point? Because not all trails are authorized for off-leash dogs. So, does anyone care to make a motion on a letter? Other edits to propose?
No, we're on the meadow. We don't stay on a dirt trail. Across from the pump track, the whole damn meadow is, we're out there. I hate to interrupt the quorum here, but what are you saying? We have to stay on a dirt trail and the dogs can't go on the grass in the meadow?
That's my understanding from Nicholas, that the dogs were authorized for trails.
It happen and it doesn't happen. That's not reality here.
It needs to be though.
No, it doesn't. I disagree totally. In fact.
All right, well, we've closed public comment, but your concern has been registered. Now it's up to the council to make a series of decisions in their own mind, what they want to support.
Can I take the mic a minute? I walk it every day.
Council members, do you want to speak?
Hey, Greg, I'm okay with letting them speak. And after this, I'm going to motion that we vote on the letter.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, the two meadows that we're talking about, the playground, definitely off limits for dogs. Where the parking lot is, where the 2 acres are, there's the watering facility inside that. Dogs are going to go there and get water. It's right by the bathroom. That's a no-go item. according to you tonight. You'd have to relocate the dishes for dog watering. I've seen I don't use that meadow, but I've seen no problems, and people gather there with their dogs. And, I don't use that. But to say that, and when I do start walking, I go towards the pond and I'm not on the trail. My dog hits the grass. He doesn't walk on a off leash on stone and gravel. He walks in that meadow, and we walk to the pond and circle and then up and down the quarry. We're not being realistic here. I say just point a letter and educate as we go, and let's take our problems as we go. We're all reasonable, but this is not reasonable. Saying I have to stay on the trail, or you thinking I'm going to stay on the trail, because I can tell you it was an off-leash park when Fran, I, and a lot of others did it, and I have the sign that says it's off-leash, unleashed dogs. All we want is our rights back. Thank you very much.
The way it is worded, off-leash dogs cannot go into the watering hole, but on leash, they could go in and get water in that meadow. Okay, let's be clear about that. They could go in there on leash and get water, as my dog does. Claire, you wanted to make a comment?
Similar to what you just said, I don't see any problem with taking your dog to get a drink of water from the water place. But the dog could be on a leash at that point. You're not walking at that point. You're going to get some water, and there's kids there getting water. There's a lot of people there that don't have dogs that are there at that particular location around the bathroom. The dog doesn't need to be off leash near the bathroom. So I think that part of the time that you're there, you're not actually walking. You're doing other things, and the dog could be on the leash at that point. I think what you're saying is pretty reasonable.
Nicholas, did you want to comment, by the way, since we're writing a letter that's going to affect you?
I got a question for Nicholas.
Why don't we take Dan's question first?
So I believe I understand the area of concern. It seems to be the sole concern. Is the big meadow across the pump track. I don't know if you could put up a map, Nicholas.
I don't have a map that detailed, Greg.
Okay, so everybody in the rooms knows what I'm talking about. The big grassy area across from the pump track as you're walking towards the pond. It's mainly on the left, a little bit on the right, and I'll be honest with you. I've been to Quarry Park quite a bit, and not to say that nobody's ever put a blanket out there and had a picnic, but I have not seen that. I have only seen people with dogs kind of running around or nobody there. Either dogs or nobody. I've never seen anybody lay down a blanket. I'll be honest with you, I don't understand what the issue is about this area. Throwing a tennis ball, come on. I'm sorry, I must be missing something, but I am not gonna tonight, I'm not gonna move forward to say that that should not be a dog area to be able to run free, unless somebody can give me a strong argument as to why that is unreasonable, because I think it's extremely reasonable, and I do believe that that's needed. It's not problematic, and in my opinion, so far, could be changed, but definitely needed and reasonable.
All right. So what I'm
I'm
hearing
all
is that
in favor of the dogs being played with.
I'm sorry,
in the meadow
public
area.
comment is closed, Fran. Okay. Council members, Dan would not vote for the precise wording that I pasted into the chat.
Greg, sorry, I didn't. I was asked if I had a comment or a response, and I wasn't sure if you wanted one or not.
Yeah, I do.
So I think my response is this. thousands of people use Quarry Park, and I've heard from fewer than 5 that this is a problem. So if I'm going to deem anything a problem, and if I'm going to identify something that requires dedicated department resources to resolve, then I need to have more conversations with more diverse user groups than less than a handful of people. And so in order for me to deem something an actual problem that warrants dedicated and targeted response, I need to be able to have information that supports that decision. And I believe that that's where we are with this, is that I haven't seen enough data. I haven't heard from enough parties to warrant that something is actually going on here that needs to be resolved. With that said, that is why I've taken it upon myself to reach out to community groups to collect more information. And if at the end of that process, it's determined that there is a problem, then we do need to change our enforcement approach, and we need to change our messaging and our education. But at this point in time, it does not appear to me, at this point in time, there's not enough data to support that.
Kimberly?
So thank you, Nicholas. I'm a little confused about what we're doing here because it sounds like we're asking for changes in what the established rules are right now. And I thought we were just providing support for going forward with the current established rules with better education, signage, and enforcement.
I thought the
So
same thing, Kimberly.
Okay.
So
You and I,
what I
Kimberly,
wanted
you
to
and I
know.
are on the same page. You and I are on the same page.
Okay, so I think, Greg, we don't need to haggle with language in this letter so much. We just need to be clear that we're supporting what the current rules, established rules are with better education, signage and enforcement.
All right, so I'm happy to entertain a rewording of this letter that says what you think we're agreeing to and move on.
Well, isn't it the letter with just,
Hey, throw it up there. It's only one sentence.
yeah.
I mean, unless you're, see, this is my point of confusion. Are you proposing to ask for changes in the rules? Because that was not my understanding.
No, I was not proposing to ask for changes. I was merely proposing to clarify the issue of where the dogs could be off leash. So the letter as written is shown on the screen right now, and we could stop with the stuff highlighted in blue. It just says we support this and stop. Or we
I'd
could
like
add
to
a
make
few
a
words.
motion. I'd like to make a motion that we vote on approving that portion, just the blue and not the yellow.
Right, we need a second.
Wait, so
I don't hear a second.
we're thinking,
Yeah, we're thinking. So, I mean, do we get a sense for everybody else on the council, like how they would feel about that? We have a discussion before we second that?
Yeah, you could second it and then we vote, and then we have a discussion and then we vote.
If we're gonna embellish it a little bit, add something about making education accessible to those that are seeking it.
I need to go back.
We need wording, and then of course we open it up for public comment once we have a motion made and seconded.
So I'm looking at that yellow and it says under the condition of additional enforcement, the current enforcement is fine,
That's
right?
been changed.
Okay.
That's been changed, Nicholas. We have several rewordings of that in the chat. The rewordings were things like the MCC supports the permanent adoption of off-leash dog walking provisions at Quarry Park and El Granada under the condition that additional enforcement and education is provided to ensure that off-leash dogs remain on off-leash designated trails. That's the most recent iteration in the chat.
You want to vote on that? Do you like this?
Let's just do the blue and trust Nicholas to do the job. Because I feel like his team.
I second, yeah, right. Is that a second?
Yeah.
Is that a second to my motion?
Second, I'm
All right,
seconding.
so we have a motion to stop the letter with a period after the word Granada. Okay, and before we vote, I'll open it up for public comment on that draft of the letter. Does anybody in the room want to make public comment on that?
Hey,
Burnett
Burnett's
has
got
raised his.
Burnett
Go
has
ahead.
his hand
Yeah, we have one member in the room that would like to make a comment. Who do you want to go first?
All right, Chris Johnson. Let's recognize Chris in the room.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Yeah, I would support that letter with the sentence in blue. I think Gus said it perfectly there, which is let's advance this letter. It's pretty succinct, and trust Nicholas and County Parks to do what they have been doing. Again, the data that Nicholas provided doesn't reveal a problem. And so therefore, adding language like under the condition of additional enforcement kind of salts the mind there with the idea that there is a problem. I like what Gus said. Let's go with this. Thank you for listening, Gus.
Burnett?
Oh, you can see from the pictures that were provided that there is a problem. Nicholas has mentioned some, I think Kimberly mentioned, people have been bitten by dogs in the park. Our biggest concern is next time it's going to be a child. We think that those areas that we've talked about need to have more enforcement. I don't know that it needs to be as broad as what you're saying, but in the area above the tot lot, there needs to be enforcement. The dogs do not run off leash in that area, that they are on leash when they're in that area. That protects everybody. That protects the dogs. That protects the kids playing in that area. And it protects any other adults in that area as well as other dogs. It's not an unreasonable request. And I think that should be put into the letter.
Okay, thank you, Burnett. Chris Tyler?
Thanks. I trust Parks and Rec. I think these are our worthy public servants. I trust their judgment. I trust their response to any changing conditions. I fully support the Midcoast Community Council's endorsement of the work that they've done.
Brand Pollard?
Yes, your wording is okay, except it should say on designated trails. That's what on the designated off-leash trails. Otherwise, it looks like they're allowed everywhere in the park. So that's the one thing. And I guess I just have to say again that I'm all for people playing with their dogs on the grassy areas in the big meadow where the pump track is, the grassy areas. But I'm only asking for the tot lot and the other and the 2 acres above, 4 little acres out of the hundreds of acres to be off limits to dogs. Yes, they can go there for the water. I would have said that water should have been outside the fence, not inside, but that's the way county did it. So yeah, they can go there for water, but we showed you all the pictures of people lay on the blankets in that 2-acre piece above the tot lot, not in the big meadow. And people play there. If you guys saw the pictures we sent, that's showing all the activities that go on there. And it should be free for the children and for families to be free of dogs running around, because when dogs are running around, kids do not go in there and play. That's it. So there should be a place for families and people without the dogs. That's all we're asking. But the big meadow, I'm okay with them playing with dogs in the meadow.
I guess what I'm on. I don't know the exact designation of the meadow versus the 2 acres just beyond the tot lot, but I personally would like to see Nicholas come up with a fencing opportunity so that the area that's most susceptible to having kids in it is not where off-leash dogs are being played with, adults tossing their balls to them and stuff. He already said they can be on leash to get their water or just to sit on a blanket with their families. But I think the problem that I'm understanding and hearing is that there's not enough awareness that that's the area is not for playing with your dog and tossing a ball and having the dog off leash in that particular area. So I do trust Nicholas to take care of it. And maybe we could put some kind of wording in that particular area needs more segregation for the children's sake. Thank you.
All right, so we have I'm closing public comment, seeing no other comment. We have a motion on the table to support the letter as highlighted in blue. I'll put it back on. We have a bunch of discussion about, and I've tried to alter the wording to deal with some of the subtleties here. But the clear and simple message right now is we support the program. So, Scott, I think it's time to call for a vote, and
Greg?
we'll see if we'll see what goes from there.
Okay, Greg,
You call for
I'm calling for the vote.
abstain. I'm
Oh, you're
abstaining.
gonna, okay. Oh, I didn't even know what, okay. Gus?
Yes.
Claire?
No.
Claire's a no. Kimberly?
I think I'm not allowed to vote.
Okay. She's not allowed.
You can
Okay.
if you want to take your one-time thing.
No, I don't.
It's twice. She doesn't want to take it.
Time.
Okay.
How about Ann?
Okay.
So let me clarify that one-time vote as well. Is this?
It's twice. There's two just cause excused absences a year. Okay. And you're allowed to vote.
Because I don't know that I feel strongly enough about this to utilize that in the event that I need this again. I never know if I'm going to have what happened to me today happen again. I don't know. I was going to say I might abstain from voting as well. And save that for a future date.
Okay. I'm gonna say yes. And then leaves Dan.
Yes.
Dan is a yes. Okay, wait a minute, hold on a second
Did you
here.
get Gus? Did you get Gus?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's not a majority.
So I think we only had 5 actual votes.
No,
I hear 3 yeses. I hear 3 yeses, 1 no, and 3 abstentions.
No, Greg abstained.
No,
I
but it wasn't.
abstained.
But if somebody's not voting, that's not an abstention, correct?
No, that's just not voting. So that would be
not voting.
3
We had 2 no
yeses,
votes.
1 no, and an abstention. And so that motion is not a quorum, right, Claire?
What, isn't 5 a quorum?
No,
It's
we
a
only have,
quorum of those.
We have, no,
we have
no, we have 5 voting, at least 5. Yourself,
Yeah,
Greg,
okay. So that does
Claire,
pass.
the
That
3
does
here.
Greg didn't vote.
It's a quorum.
Greg didn't
I
vote.
abstain.
Of an
I
actual
abstain.
vote.
My vote is to abstain.
Yes, that's an actual vote.
That's a vote.
That counts
I
for
voted
a
to
quorum.
abstain.
So we have
To
5.
make it simple, it's 3-1.
It's
with 1 abstention.
1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So that
it
vote, so the letter
passes.
passes.
The motion
The letter
passes. It's very clear.
I'm not sure it's clear.
okay,
I'll
I think it
clarify with
has to
Tim.
Hold on
be
a
a
second.
4. It has to be 4, right? A majority of the council?
No, it has to be a majority of those voting.
No, that's not true.
So let me review what I have written down. So Greg is an abstain, Gus is a yes, Claire's a no. Kimberly chose not to be present, right?
She's not a vote.
She's not voting. Ann abstained.
I'm not voting as well.
Ann is not voting.
Yes, Ann is not voting.
No vote.
So there are
Okay.
only 5 votes.
4.
Okay, let me, Greg,
Greg's abstained.
Greg, can I help here?
Counts as a vote. It's a
Okay.
vote to abstain.
Go ahead, Dan.
And it's an actual
Okay,
vote.
so the whole issue of a quorum is, do we have enough voting members at the meeting? yes, we have established that. We have enough voting members at this meeting. Okay, now we took a vote and this vote won. I don't understand what is any confusion here.
No, I agree with you, Dan. And I will
Okay.
confirm it with Tim Fox before I send the letter, but I believe the motion is passed.
Yep.
Okay, but just to touch base with Tim, I'll make sure that what we did is a legal vote. Okay. So I would like to conclude this agenda item, and I appreciate the passion in the community for this issue. Nicholas, thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, we now have a next agenda item, the Montero Hotel project. And before I begin, I think I should just ask, does anyone in the council wish to take a 5-minute break, or can we proceed to the next agenda item?
I'm okay with moving on unless somebody else wants.
Do this.
Yeah.
Do it.
Good night.
See ya.
Good night.
Appreciate you
Thank
coming.
you. Good night.
Okay, so who's going to lead this discussion?
Me.
Claire?
Yeah. Actually, I am.
Okay, and you wanted me to show a particular document called the plan document, right?
Yeah, that was the one that I think it should be online.
It is online, and I'm sharing what I have in that document right now.
And that's it. And if you want to go down, that's a lot. Yeah, we can start right here with the schematics, please. And then I'll just, yeah, that works. And then we can just go from there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So this is a proposed 3-story, 22-room hotel at Main Street and 7th Street, Montero. It's going to have 15 parking spots underground, and one of those will be designated for handicap parking. Employee facilities and laundry are located next to the underground parking. Actually, if we want to come up, I think it's 2 more slides. Oh, the other way. Sorry about that. This kind of shows, and I think, oh, maybe I'm wrong. A few more down. I guess you keep going down. I think the parking garage. There we are. I'm so sorry. Here we are. And this is the parking. And this is the proposed parking area. And then you can see the employee, there's an employee lounge, laundry, housekeeping, and then the restrooms for the employees. And all of this is underground. So that's that part of the proposal. Let's see. The first pre-application meeting was held November 17th, 2020. The video of the meeting is on fmcgov.org, and the case number is 2016-00328. And that's some more photographs of 3D renderings of what the proposed hotel will look like. It requires a coastal development permit, grading permit, and merger design review permit, use permit, and removal of several significant trees. And let's see, this is the information I have on it. Paul McGregor is the owner. It the hotel will face Main Street for its entrance, and the 7th Street will be the entrance to the garage. They will be maintaining 31% of the landscape already there. The southwest corner has a height of 32 feet, 6 inches, a small section of the roof that extends that tall. The materials that they plan to use are hardy shingle and siding and stucco for the garage. There will be decks on the front and back. They're going to use earth tone colors. The elevator from the parking to the hotel will be available. There's no conference rooms, no restaurant. There is a sitting area for a happy hour, but no other really food establishments inside. And the owner thinks that families will put visiting family members in the hotels, or visitors to the coast will come, and those are the people who will be occupying the rooms. They say that they will employ locals, and 2 to 3 rooms will be designated for lower income use. So that was the first part. And then when Claire, Kimberly and I met, we came up with some questions because as you can see, there's another slide actually that shows the rooms. I think if you go, not sure if we go back up a little bit. Oh, yeah, I think, whoops, if we go back, it was on one of those, it's, I think if you go back, yeah, let's see. I think it's for now, you have to go down a little. I'm so sorry. Nope, the one after this, is that, nope, that's the land. Let's see. One of them shows the room. So that's the parking garage.
There's rooms.
There it is.
That's
So
parking
this
garage.
is this the one? Yeah. So this is the room. Is this the first? So this is the first floor and there's a second floor. One of the things we noted was that not all of the rooms showed bathrooms. And we don't know if that's part of the schematic. Is that something that is overlooked, or are there not bathrooms for every room? We haven't figured that out yet. So that's a question we have for the developer. So we're not really sure if all of the rooms are planned to have restrooms in them or not. Does anybody else on the council that helped me want to speak to these, or do you want me to just list some of our concerns?
I think you should do your presentation and reflect the sense of the subcommittee and then open it up to the council for questions, and then we'll go to public comment.
Okay, so we were concerned that the parking is inadequate for 22 rooms and staff. We felt that motel standards should be applied instead of hotel standards in light of the isolated location of the hotel. The traffic study greatly underestimates the amount of traffic going in and out of the hotel in light of the fact that there are no attractions in easily walk distance of the hotel. We also didn't know if they're still planning to hold 10% of the units as affordable. We wanted to clarify how the height is measured and whether the building is below 28 feet at its highest point, because that is something that is a standard that's basically being used on the coast. That generally speaking, it goes from grade to the highest point is usually 28 feet. That seems to be the standard. So we're just concerned that are they higher than that? We want to provide a certified drainage and stormwater report and plan. I did see that there is a sidewalk in the front that is planned, but we want to make sure that there's contiguous walkways completely around the building. Our plans complete, especially in regards to water connections. We noticed that was what I mentioned earlier about the bathrooms. We're not sure if all the rooms come with bathrooms or not. We want to provide a lighting plan because there wasn't one specified that would be compliant with dark sky international standards. And we want to provide signage for the exterior of the project. So I think that was kind of all of the concerns that we came up with. And then so that's it. That's what we have so far.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. You can tell me when you want me to put it back on.
Thank you.
So let me just recognize Claire and Kimberly before we go around the council, and then we'll open it up to public comment, okay? So Claire, did you want to say anything more than what I had already said?
No, I think that's a good start. I do want to say a couple of things. One is regarding the water connections. We think that they are grossly minimizing the number of water connections they're going to need. And we would like to not only figure out what they actually are asking for, but to ask that there be some water conservation applied to whatever it is they're going to put in there. There were also suggestions from the public that we ask for solar energy. There's plenty of roof space for that. And I also we all got, you all saw it, a thing from Lisa Ketchum regarding parking standards for hotels. Apparently the standards haven't been formally brought up to a new advanced level, but all of the recent hotels that she's aware of have had at least as many parking spaces as there are rooms. That's all.
Kimberly, did you want to augment the group's report?
No, I think they both covered it all. The affordability issue, that I think, Ann, you said 15%.
I think they originally said 10%. They said 2 to 3 of the rooms.
Okay. I mean, I'd like there to be more than just 2 or 3 rooms in terms of coastal access for people who, can't afford an expensive boutique hotel. That's the only other point I would raise. Thank you.
So I'm going to propose that we go in alphabetical order to the remaining members of the council, with me going last, unfortunately. Dan, you're D. Comments, questions?
Well, yeah, actually, I have a question. The whole affordability, I guess I've heard of, the concept of making a certain percentage of apartment buildings or condos affordable, but I guess I've never heard of it blended into in a hotel situation. Is that common now, or is this the only one that's been brought up?
It's come up with a couple. It's come up with the Hyatt proposal in Half Moon Bay. It came up with Dunes Beach. I think that people are proposing it as a way to convince the Coastal Commission that it increases access to the coast.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can see the value of getting the parking right versus the room because the neighborhood residential streets would absorb any extra parking, and that would be an impact to the neighborhood. So certainly, now our time frame on this is what now?
Can I speak to that? Because is it okay if I answer that? The original time frame that they wanted this to be commented on was September 1st. We've been just inundated with other things, as you know, and I had asked for an extension until October 1st. I just talked with the planner, and he is unwilling to extend it any further than October 1st. So what we were proposing to do, if it works out for the council, is this planning subgroup with me and Kimberly and Ann are basically designated to write comments on behalf of the council. And what we're proposing to do is that rather than come up with a letter here tonight, that we write comments to include whatever the council wants us to include tonight and send it to them like over the next 2 days.
And if I could comment on that as a point of order, it is normal procedure for the code and planning review group to respond to a myriad of tree removal ordinances and other kinds of things. They do this all the time. So the idea that we don't vote on a letter is fine by me, because we trust the planning review people to do this kind of thing regularly.
But we wanted to include what the council wants us to say.
Fine. So next council member after D would be G for Gus. Comments?
I mean, basically, I think Dan articulated the parking issue well. I think the committee's highlighted some of the, I think the water issues for me would be the ones I would be probably most interested in really digging deeper into. But I certainly, it seems like they've identified, the subcommittees identified, I think, all the major issues. So I don't have anything more to add beyond what they've already identified.
Scott?
So in conjunction with Cypress Point, I don't see how they could build within the next few years, right? Because of the growth limit. And also, when you look at the architectural drawings, there's going to be engineering drawings associated with those. And I don't see how they could match, because you said there were no bathrooms. you said there was issues. I mean, and that means that they're not displaying plumbing, right? So they're not displaying water hookups. And so I think the engineering drawings will be more important than the architectural drawings in this case. When I don't know if we get to see those though.
Well, they should be available both to us and to the CDRC before anything is actually acted on. This is not subject to the 40 unit limitation because it's not residential.
Okay.
And they're anticipating they would like to build it in 2025.
Wow, that's a lot of construction in Montera. Thanks.
Am I next? Am I last before we open it up for public comment? I think I am. So let me just type in my notes so that it's a matter of public record here. Claire just clarified the growth limit. Parking, of course, you brought up. I just point out that when I moved here in 2011-12, there were 3 coffee shops. We're down to 0. There may be another one coming back as a bakery, but the point is there's nothing around here. Okay. So it's not clear that this makes any sense in terms of fitting into the community. I want to strenuously object to any height above whatever Lisa tells us is the maximum. What I saw in those drawings is already going to block some view. And I know this is going to drive the developer crazy, but no variance above 28 feet above grade. I'm sorry. The other hotel that's already there is an eyesore. It's a bottleneck. It's blocking the view. You know, if we could tear that one down and I'd let them build this one, but that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a key view blocking point for the rest of the city or the town. Now to the water issue. MWSD has an urban water plan from 2017. It's 6 years old. It's out of date. Most water agencies update every 5 years. If you read the comments that we made in Cypress Point, you know that at one point during the last drought, they went from drawing 24-year-old water from the Alta Vista well to 3,000-year-old water. And they had to suspend and curtail the draw on that well. Instead, they can use airport wells where the water is lower quality, has to use chemicals and be filtered, and we have to pay the county to use it. So the more water we draw from the airport wells, the more we're raising the rates and the cost to every other ratepayer. So what I want to see is an updated water plan from MWSD, plus an update on that study by the hydrologist, because I'm very concerned that we're reaching the limit. And that was only a 3-year drought, by the way. The longest drought in modern California history is 7 years. And the longest drought in prehistory, you know, back to 1200 is 100 years, 120 years. So I'm very worried about the water supply. If this group were able to be issued second-class water rights so they could be turned off when we have a crisis, and they were to pay the highest marginal cost of water, then I would have less argument. I certainly don't want to see any irrigation there. I do agree with solar panels. I don't think enforcement of these promises is defined and cannot be trusted given what we've seen from the county. But the most fundamental thing is we're supposed to be building housing. What are we doing building a hotel and using our water on that? I mean, it makes no sense to me at all. We already have enough conflict over people using short-term rentals, you know, to make money and keep their houses as opposed to allowing them to be for housing. We have a controversy over that, and we're going to allow a hotel. So drive me crazy. I'll stop. Those are my comments. Okay, I think that was the council. I think now we open it up to public comment. And then after we finish public comment, we can discuss the action that the subgroup is going to take. All right. So I see Justine Cable, but Dan, you'll have to wake me up if there are people in the room there.
Yes, we have 2 people would like to speak in the room.
Okay.
Ready?
Let them introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Hi, Chris Johnson again. In addition to being on the dog committee for 6 years and the MCC for 5 years, I was also on the Coastside Design Review Committee for 10 years as the El Granada community representative. And I want to say, as a former member of that committee, I really appreciate the summary that was provided of the issues with this project. There's a couple there that seem to me pretty extreme. I think Greg has mentioned a couple, the height issue, the parking issue. And I just want to say, it will not come before Coastside Design Review Committee because it does not have a residential element unless there is some kind of caretaker unit, because it's not mixed use as far as I could see. So it will be a ministerial decision. So that's really important that the MCC weighs in on it in the detailed way that I'm hearing right now. So I really appreciate that. Last thing I would say is that if this came before the CDRC, it would be a non-starter. We would say this is not fully baked and we're not ready to look at this just on the bathroom issue. I mean, what is this 1840 where rooms and hotels don't have their own bathrooms anymore? That is suspicious. I guess that's a harsh word to say, but it doesn't make sense. And if this came before CDRC, we would be over in 2 minutes. Bring it back when you've got a full set of plans, because this is not a full set of plans to be reviewed. So I appreciate the CDRC's work, the MCC's work on this. Thank you very much.
Who's next in the room there, Dan?
We have Carl May.
Carl May, Moss Beach, but a 10-year resident of Montera at one time before Moss Beach. All I came to talk about tonight has already essentially been covered, but I want to mention a couple of things. The community, what I think of as community business districts, which are very limited in area in Moss Beach and Montera, could provide the only small town driving prevention businesses that we have. And these are being reduced both in Moss Beach by something I don't think has been discussed here yet at the MCC, and in Montera by projects like this hotel. You are taking away the possibility of us having more of a small downtown nucleus. And one thing I appreciated from early years in my life is the advantages of small towns. There are many disadvantages, but advantages as far as uniting a community and being, frankly, more efficient about providing things. So that's one thing. The back height of this thing, and by the way, I wasn't able to expand the plans that were put up. The rear height of this thing at 32 feet or whatever it is should be automatically no. I mean, Lisa worked on this a lot when she was on the council. 28 feet from grade should be the maximum anywhere in our area. I want to mention that when this was brought up before, we had considerable community participation from residents in Montera. I don't think they even knew this thing was coming up on the agenda tonight. And some of those were view blocking concerns, parking concerns, and so forth. So I think this is a real premature thing right now. I don't think this thing's sufficiently worked over to really even be presented to us. Thank you.
Is that it for the room, Dan?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we have Justine Cable who's been waiting.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Justine Cable, resident of Montara for the last couple of years. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. In regards to the proposed hotel, I just want to add some additional concerns to have noted in the record, echoing finite water resources, but additionally, Montara doesn't have the appropriate infrastructure in place to support additional development. We have exceptional beaches on the coast, but we don't have safe methods for pedestrians to cross the highway currently to access the beach. If they're parked on the east side of the highway, we don't have proper bicycle lanes for cyclists, as we talked about earlier in this call, in this meeting, and we invite more tourists that wouldn't have safe passage to cycle on the roads. Additionally, we have issues with traffic already, and adding more traffic when we don't have the ability to manage that traffic well with the current state of the highway. It's currently, not something where we even have a roadmap that really can solve for that, especially for the stretch that goes through Montera. And in fact, the roads aren't even well maintained. We have a partial landslide on the east side of Highway 1 between 9th and 10th Street in Montera that just has an orange cone that's holding it back to signal danger there. So with that being said, like, you need to think about building simple things like pedestrian footbridges before we start inviting more people to come to the area. And in terms of like mitigating things like beach pollution, I would like to think that when we consider these types of projects, we want to make sure that we are ensuring that our beach remains pristine and we don't end up on beach bummer lists like the Lindemar Beach. And additionally, figuring out how to make sure that the existing utilities that are in place proposed ensure that we don't pollute Montara State Beach and other surrounding beaches. And also, when it comes to hotels, if we were actually to push something like this through, the occupancy tax and revenue generated by a new business like this, I mean, does Montara benefit from any of the revenue that's generated by the hotel directly? I mean, I don't see how that could actually happen, because if a new hotel or other business comes into the community, what mechanisms are legally in place to help bring value adds like playgrounds, parks, permanent public restrooms, community centers, or publicly accessible electric vehicle chargers to the actual community. So those are just like some concerns in general that I have in addition to that. And lastly, of course, because of climate change, the waters were tested severely with the storms, and we don't have very good emergency preparedness plans in place still. So if we were to actually break ground and bring hotels into the area, we still don't have really good plans in place for the need to, evacuate those guests. I mean, we were without, unless you had a good satellite connection, we didn't even have a virtual connection to emergency systems over the last winter. As some of you may recall, once the cell phone tower was down, we were all disconnected for a period of time. So those are just some concerns that I have with this type of hotel coming in when we don't have the best infrastructure in place to really support those kinds of developments at present. And I just want to thank everybody's time for listening to those concerns and having it noted in the record. Thank you.
All right. Next public commenter, Sid Young.
Thank you. I support everything that Justine just said. I did want to mention two or three things. First of all, I didn't look hard at their garage structure, but is there EV chargers at all on this project? Okay, well, you can put that down as probably not, and they should have some. Secondly, maybe those affordable rooms that they're talking about are the ones with no bathrooms. I don't know, but you should clarify that, because back in the day, I think Paul McGregor's been a longtime contractor on the coast. But what they would do is they would plumb out a laundry room and then turn it into a whole entire, bathroom suite after they got their final. So you might want to just double check make sure that those rooms are specifically not going to ever have bathrooms. They may just trying to be undercounting so they can get away with the water permit connections. Secondly, that was second. Third, I'm really concerned about stormwater retention on the property. Now, I read that thing that Diana Shu had signed off on, and it didn't seem to say that there was a plan for any kind of a catchment system or a retention pond on the property. So maybe they're just going to let it run downhill into the ocean and pollute it. And I have a big problem with that. It happens at Quarry Park. It's going to probably happen at Midpen and run out onto Carlos Street. And this hotel is closer to the ocean than a lot of the other properties. So I think you should call up Diana Shu and ask her what are the stormwater retention provisions, because when I was reading it, it looked like it was exempt or they hadn't made any plans. And it said something, there was a checkbox that said entering the storm drain as if we had them. which we don't, as everybody knows. There are very few storm drains on the coast, and they're not allowed to go into the sanitary sewer. So those are my three big things: EV chargers, find out about those rooms with no bathrooms, and maybe those are the ones they're designating affordable because they have to go down the hall to use a bathroom, like in a rooming house, and then the stormwater retention. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other members of the public wishing to make comment. Hearing none, I'm closing public comment. I will note, Anne, I've been typing things into the chat. I routinely capture the chat file and I will send it out so that you have some hope of, seeing what the comments were, retaining them, but it's more of the same. I did want to make a comment on the sewer, which I forgot to make before. You saw in the Cypress Point thing that we had two objections. The sewer plant overall was beyond capacity at peak wet weather. But just as worrisome is the fact that the wet weather storage in El Granada came within 6 inches of capacity on October 25th, 2021. Okay, and so the development of things like Cypress Point and this hotel, which would need to go through the wet weather storage in El Granada, means that even if they solve the problem at the plant, we still have a capacity problem in the sewer and what's called the IPS, the intertie pipeline system. And so I would like that flagged in addition. All right, so I think we should go around the council and get the sense of the council and then let you all get on with it. So Dan, you have your hand raised?
Yes, so I've already talked about parking. Hey, I agree with others that say, hey, if the drawings are not complete, they should come back when they are complete. But I think one of the most important things, visualizing, a hotel at this location, certainly, I believe it will be a moneymaker. And if this project is granted permission to build it, it will be making money. But at the same time, it will be impacting the whole coast side. And what I specifically mean is, people that are going to stay there are probably going to be continually walking across, the highway in a dangerous area. If there was an underpass there, that would have no impact on the highway. But there is not an underpass there. So these pedestrians, the way things have been going, there'll probably be a couple accidents, and then they'll put in a stoplight, and then that will impact, the overall flow. So I'm one to ask for people to support the flow of Highway 1, and this project I think would have a great impact on that. And as to what Carl May has mentioned, if it's not a hotel, what would be a better use of this land? And I want to say that the potential of having some other commercial smaller suites or whatever, coffee shop. I haven't fully thought this out, but maybe we could poll the community and find out what type of services that they feel are lacking. And we'll just go with it. I'll go with that. I'll stop there.
Hey,
Are there
Greg,
other council members? We closed public comment, Sid.
I thought of one more thing. 7th Street is right turn only there. So that's going to cause a log jam because the hotel parking garage goes out on 7th.
So any other council members wishing to make comments to the planning review group? All right, hearing none. Claire and Ann, are you satisfied with the discussion, and we can close this agenda item?
Yeah, I think we have a lot to go on. This is a whole lot more. So this will be very helpful. Oh, Kimberly?
Just a question. I see that there are 2 phone connections that have joined, and how do we know if they raise their hand, or
There's
do we
a
need to check with
there's a
them?
mechanism there's a mechanism defined in the agenda that explains how you raise your hand on the phone. It's the last paragraph in the agenda. On the mobile app, you dial *9. I've never done it, but they haven't spoken up or unmuted themselves. So I'm going to say that, we're within protocol here. All right. I believe that closes the agenda item.
Okay, as usual, we will send whatever it is that we put together and send to the county. We will send a copy to everybody on the council, and it will go in the on the website.
Please convey to Chris Johnson my welcoming him to the MCC next term.
No. Good try, Greg. Good try.
Okay, that closes agenda item 4B. Kimberly, you now have a little bit of an update on the Montara Mountain North Peak Access Road maintenance. You or Scott, as I recall?
Yeah, we'll both talk about it.
Yeah.
Does somebody want to be co-host? Do you have slides to show?
Yes.
I'm going to try and share my slides, and we'll see if it works.
Let me make you co-host so that will work.
Okay.
Okay, you should get a notice that you've been made a co-host, and your share screen will work.
Share screen. There we go. Oh, wait, can you see my screen?
Not yet. There it goes.
It's coming. It's coming. Is that a solitaire game?
Hold on a
There we
second.
go.
Let me see if I can make it full screen. I don't know how to make it full screen.
Click slideshow. Click that word slideshow.
Oh, there, I see it.
Can I say
There you
something?
go.
Okay. It's 10 to 10. And this is an extremely important presentation that I'm very interested in. But I guess I'm looking at the time, and I'm wondering, I hate to break it 2 parts, but do the authors have any thoughts as far as, really, how long will the presentation take, do you think?
We could probably whip through it in 5 minutes.
Would that be cheap?
No, I don't think this is a 5-minute, not a useful
do it in
5-minute presentation.
6 minutes.
Well, let's hear what Kimberly would say.
I mean, if Scott wants to try and cover the slides in 6 minutes, we can do that. But I would say also that we potentially have California State Parks coming to present on this item on October 11th with a backup of October 25th. So if we wanted, we could just push it to that meeting and provide this as an introduction. Or Scott can go through the slides now, and then I can introduce the I guess the other stuff at the other meeting.
What do you feel about this, Greg?
If Kimberly and Scott are willing to defer the bulk of the discussion to the other meeting, I agree with Dan that we've gotten late. But I got to defer to you, Kimberly. I agreed to put this on the agenda.
Scott, how do you feel? I mean, I'm happy to punt it to the next meeting. But I'm also happy.
My comment about going through in 5 minutes was just kidding. These slides were designed to engage people and engage people in discussion on what are the next steps and what else we should do. So I don't want to limit ourselves, and I'm pretty tired. I mean, right now. So I think we should respect Montara and put it when we're fresh. How does that sound to you, Kimberly?
Could I suggest
I'm
just
okay with
having
that.
it maybe some type of
Kimberly, let Kimberly talk, please.
Well, I'm okay with whatever you guys would like to do. This has been an exceedingly long meeting, and probably we were ambitious in thinking we could cover the topics we had, but I'm fine either way.
I think it would be nice to have a short preview. I mean,
Want it now?
just, you know, just kind of a preview, knowing that it'll be to be continued. If you think that you could do it without butchering it up too much.
You want to you want to do it now? You want to throw that back up there, Kimberly, and we'll just talk through them briefly?
Well, we can talk through the slides and make it brief and then revisit it.
Let's present it to the parks people in all its glory, but we'll preview them now. If that's what you guys want to do.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, let's go.
So Scott, do you want me to, or do you want to start?
No, you can. I mean, that's a beautiful picture of Montera Mountain right there that you can all see, and that's where we like to go. So you can go to the next slide, Kimberly.
No, it's not going. Can you see the next slide?
Not yet. No, I can see your mouse. I can see your cursor moving, but I don't see the next slide.
How's that?
Can you? Nope. Oh, there you go. Okay.
There we are.
This is the current state of the North Peak. And we know that it has a bunch of degradation from what they did to change the road for access to the North Peak. We were concerned about the edge and runoff. We're concerned about increased erosion. When you cut down all that debris that we see on the left side, not debris, when you cut down all the vegetation on the left side of the road, you increase the potential for invasive species to come in and take over that, like poison oak, for example. There's endangered species up there that we're concerned about. It looks bad, like we said, there's a negative impact on the scenic and recreational experience. And and we do want to talk about maintenance in the future, and how what they're doing now is not sustainable. Go ahead, you can go to the next slide. So this is you, Kimberly.
Oh, so this is just a list of the current landowners. California State Parks owns most of the land that includes the North Peak Access Road, which serves as a recreational trail in McNee Ranch Park, and the amount of 4.4 miles. North County Watercoast District leases their area to San Mateo County Parks. The National Park Service, GGNRA, owns two small overlapping sections below the peak, and American Tower Corporation owns 1/4 mile of the access road at the peak, which is just a very short section. And the SFPUC, where the road terminates, owns only 1/4 mile section from that section owned by ATC. So if we go to the next slide, which is it's not the best map, but if you can see my cursor, right? So the access road here. The access road here is where my cursor is. It goes through McNee Ranch. And then this little bitty square is the ATC property, and then bordering the SFPUC property. So you can see that's just a little tiny sliver of land in this sea of parks. And you can see where what is this piece? GGNRA overlaps right here and right here, just a little. So that sort of gives you the lay of the land. All of this part is San Pedro Valley County Park, which is county, but all of this is state parks, which is why we've invited state parks to come and give us a presentation and give us their thoughts on maintaining the road, and particularly how this particular maintenance effort happened. We do know that state parks people were present, so they can talk about that and answer particular questions. This slide just tells you that, what happened. In May of this year, the Department of Emergency Management submitted their request for emergency road repair to service the communications infrastructure on Montera's North Peak. And they produced a report aimed at making the case for emergency maintenance in order to access partial funding for the project from the Cal OES mission tasking budget, which was the 2022-2023 budget, allocated specifically for damages from the severe storms in March. To do that, they needed to make sure that they made the case that some of the damage to the road came from those storms. The proposal sought to minimize the workload impact to the county departments, accomplish the work in the quickest manner possible, minimize the financial impact, and engage in coordination with other departments, landowners, and infrastructure stakeholders as a relationship building opportunity. These are all things included in the summary that Dave Barnett provided to us. County Public Works was the lead agency, and that allowed them the CEQA exemption. And then the emergency permit was, the emergency CDP was issued by the Department of Planning and Building. You all asked what role did the county play? This just outlines the role. They were the lead and responsible party on the project. Planning and work on the ground was coordinated by the county. They used PG&E equipment and operators, and representatives from the other parks, California State Parks, county parks, GGNRA, supposedly were all present for some or all the work each day. I still haven't seen the plan that was executed, which should have recorded who exactly was there each day. And I can't figure out how we can access that or if it's retained, but hopefully someone will provide that to us. The list below that is the things that were overlooked. So information process and lessons learned from previous road maintenance. This was not the first road maintenance, and yet they didn't really look back at previous road maintenance to see what went well, what didn't go well, and learn from it, or to follow to provide some continuity. Guidelines and best practices for California rural road maintenance. This was a surprise to me. There are two guidelines that the county has and the state for these types of roads. The RCD has one posted on their website, and then the state has one posted as a reference. And there are some elements of those that were not followed in terms of guidelines and best practices. Missing from all this was acknowledging the value of the road as part of the park and its trail system. Previous habitat, ecosystem, and plant studies and inventories, there seemed to be no sort of looking back at previous studies and inventories or taking the larger picture into consideration. It's still unclear what, I guess, the person there who inventoried and who was there on site during the actual work, it's still unclear what happened. So I think California State Parks can help us answer those questions. And then the continuity of stewardship and conservation. So there doesn't seem to be any continuity in those who stewarded the park before and what happened and what they're doing now. So those were some of the things that we thought were overlooked. There are others, and I have a larger list. So I'll let Scott take it from there.
Okay, so we wanted to think what are the future goals for Montera Mountain, and there was just we could just think of two of them. One was preservation and one was restoration. And in the future, I mean, what can be done to ensure that sensitive habitat and the character of the mountain are protected in the future? And a strategy is needed to ensure that this stuff doesn't happen again. And, we're good stewards of that mountain. As far as restoration goes, there needs to be their erosion control and the mitigation of that needs to be looked at. Is there any plan for mitigation for fixing the habitats, like restoration habitats of the North Peak after the grading of the towers? You can go to the next slide. And so we wanted to know, are there other routes to the North Peak? And this slide shows you the current access, and Kimberly already showed us kind of a picture of this, and it's 4.4 miles long. It has lock gates on it, but fewer than another proposed route. It does have very steep gradient. There's maintenance issues that we've already discussed, and there's sensitive habitats there that need to be disrupted. Well, they say they need to be disrupted to get their equipment up the mountain. And the majority of the road is on California State Park land. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, is there a better way to get to the top of this mountain? So that's the start of this road is on El Granada Boulevard. And if you take El Granada Boulevard to the top of El Granada, you reach a gate. If you open that gate, you're on another paved road that takes you into the watershed land, and another very nice road that will take you to the North Peak that's already very well maintained. As I say up there, it's 2.1 miles of paved road. Montara has the current route is not paved at all. It's got 1.3 miles of dirt and 3.8 miles on the perimeter road. But the problem is some of that portion of that route is on watershed land, and there are similar maintenance issues according to that. So, and below that picture, I showed a picture of the gradient of this proposed route, and it's much less steep than the current route to the top of Montara Mountain. And I think, okay, there's one more slide in there. You can go to the next one. So here are some possible actions we can take. We can draft a letter to the county agents departments with questions, concerns, and recommendations. We've already invited the California State Parks to tell us what they think about the issues. We definitely encourage dialogue between all the stakeholders. We need to request development and maintenance guidelines and best practices specifically for this area. I would love to advocate for alternate routes and more new and community infrastructure options that can replace the reliance on that particular site. So better infrastructure, so we're not relying on something at the top of a mountain in a storm. And I'm not going to ask you to go back to the other slides, but if you zoom in on those pictures, I don't want, Kimberly and I talked about this earlier, and I know Carl has opinions on it too. And these are not fire roads; they're trails for hiking up on Montara Mountain. I think we really need to refer to them as trails and not the fire road. I know I'm used to calling it the fire road, but if we get out of that habit, I think it'd be a better idea also. And that's it, right? That's it.
Yep.
Did we say thank you? Is that it, Kimberly?
So that's the quick and dirty.
Yeah, that was as quick as I could get through that, or we could get through that.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that us to digest it and kind of
okay.
Think about it some more. Thank you.
I don't see any requests for public comment.
Good.
Which I'm grateful for, because we will be covering this again at a coming meeting. All right, so I'd like to close this agenda item and ask about council member activity. All right, I'm going to mention one thing, Dan. Or do you have something you want to? So yeah. The day after
you.
The day after we completed our report on Cypress Point, I met with my third geologist. I've now met with a federal geologist, a state geologist, and a private consulting geologist. None of them will talk on the record. You can understand why the federal and state people might not. This consulting geologist has potential conflict of interest. What I learned was that our concerns about the hydrology and the stormwater runoff from Cypress Point are more than justified. In fact, things are worse than we thought. If you read our report, you'll remember that one of our residents, Mike Prieto, I think was his name, pointed out that there already was a lot of drainage going down onto the lands that Cypress Point's going to go on, and it pools there. And so the concern we registered in our write-up was, hey, you can't just solve the problem of the runoff from your own buildings and the 150,000 square feet of impermeable space. you have to now deal with a few acres, potentially 10 or 20 acres uphill that are already being serviced by this land. And by not taking that into account in your design, you're going to create a runoff problem. What I learned from this geologist was fascinating. The entirety of the water supply in the Alta Vista tank in Montero Water and Sanitary District comes about because the soil in our area is incredibly permeable. It's really a sponge. And that's why that aquifer exists. And that soil has been able to survive certain major storms in the past without massive runoff. That same soil is underneath Cypress Point. So that 11-acre parcel that they're talking about turning into hard permeable surfaces is going to subtract a significant buffer. The problem is we don't have a geologist giving us a written report to say that in writing. But I just wanted to flag that in addition to the other concerns about Cypress Point and the traffic, the stormwater thing is going to be no joke. We just need to find somebody who would say it on record. And I don't know if we hire our own geologist, but I wanted to register that it's a serious issue. All right, I'm done. Dan?
I just wanted to say, I attended the Highway 1, Moss Beach congestion, whatever they want to call it. I just want to say, well, let's see. There was very little information provided. In fact, there was information that was saying that leading that a roundabout would always be flowing, and denying the fact that if there's somebody in the roundabout, a car on Highway 1 would have to come to a complete stop. Otherwise, they would hit that car. And increasing, so there was just, there was a lot of, feel the discussion should have been focused on, capacity of the road and, sorry, getting tired here, but, how what are the options of how are the existing traffic lights that are programmed a certain way? How are they working? How can they be improved? What type of smart technology? How much it impacts people crossing, pedestrians crossing the highway, how that would impact the flow of the overall road. So it's my opinion that the time that I spent there was kind of just a bit wasted, to be honest with you. I was disappointed that they didn't really give more data, really information that we could really use and talk between each other and how changes to the highway would impact our overall life here on the coast side. That's all.
Other council members? Hearing none, I just want to run through and make sure we have, Kimberly.
Kimberly.
So in regard to Dan's comment just now on the Moss Beach Highway 1 congestion and safety project, Lynn, I think, had some information he wanted to share, and I don't know if he's still on.
Well, this is council
activity.
Yeah,
but he could speak under council activity because he's acting on behalf of the council. So yeah, that's a point.
He's not on the council.
No, but we served on one of our working groups, is my point.
I guess I was just bringing it up for continuity in terms of that particular project, but it's fine if you want to, we can pass over that.
We're going to bring it up again in October, right?
Yeah, they're coming here to present to us.
Yes.
Yeah, great. So we can ask all our.
Oh, because that leads smoothly into future agendas. We definitely have a presentation on October 11th. And Kimberly, can we count? You don't know yet if we can count on state parks on October 11th?
I'm just waiting for them to tell me which date works for them. I suggested the 11th with a backup of the 25th.
Well, that would complete our agenda on the 11th, and I'm very much in favor of that. Gus, you have the herbicide issue on the 25th. Is that lined up?
So Melissa is coming on the 25th, and her and whoever she's bringing to present. But
Okay.
which means if we're gonna have RCD or parks kind of give their side of the issue, then maybe, I mean, is it more efficient for parks to come on the 25th and also talk about the other thing? I don't know.
What do you mean the other thing? It sounds
thing we
like
were
we
just
have a
talking
very
about now.
long herbicide issue. But we have a long herbicide issue on the 25th.
Right.
We have road things on the 11th, and we have Montera Mountain on the 11th.
Okay.
What else do
Sounds
we have
good.
on the 25th?
So far, just roundup on the 25th, right?
Yeah. Unless Kimberly's unable to get state parks to come on the 11th, which is, all right. So we have an open potential spot. We certainly have more than enough to discuss on stormwater, but that's fungible. All right. So Ann and I can get together and we'll fill in. Anything else on future agendas?
Yes.
Kimberly.
I'd like to have Jim Pruitt come back and talk to us about, the Harbor Dredge project, because we didn't really get that report out. And I understand that Tom Matoush was going to give a presentation at some upcoming meeting about this, and it'd be nice to get our quarterly update from Jim.
All right, Kimberly, once you know whether or not State Parks is coming on the 11th or the 25th, would you let me know? And then you and I can reach out to Jim Pruitt and have him hopefully fill the gap. One of those two meetings will have time for him to give us an update.
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know
I
if
think
he
it's
can
just a standard update. It's not like a big meaty, unless you want it to be.
No, you're the expert there. All right. I think we're done with council member activity, and help me out again, Dan. What do we do on adjournment? We call it.
Motion to adjourn. Any objection?
Nope.
No,
Hearing
so
none.
by acclamation, we are adjourned.
By acclamation, we are adjourned. Thank you all. It was a long meeting.